And then he asked me, hey, mate, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm like, when I was a kid, I always thought about acting. And he's like, why don't you do it? And that was just that question of like, yeah, why don't I try it at least, you know? A week I would come into New York, and this was, before the internet and all that. So I would map out all the different offices, casting directors and agents that I was going to visit, and I had a backpack full of pictures and resumes, and I would rollerblade all over the city. I mean, that's how I would get around. I just backpack, get off the train or the bus, and get on my skates, and I just went door to door. I mean, I got tossed out of one agency eventually because I would stop by there too much and they'd yell at me to get out. But the first 8-9 years of my acting was in New York City. He's like, you have to move to LA, because if you don't, 10 years are gonna go by and you're still gonna be schlepping microscopes and you're gonna be like, what the hell happened? And I go to work, and it was the first time in my career where I couldn't remember my lines.
This is the first day on set?
First day on set.
Okay.
I go home that night, I'm bawling my eyes out.
Did you consider that like the big break?
Yeah.
Was Bloodline?
That was a game changer.
Yeah.
I asked my dad recently, a couple of years ago, I'm like, what did you think when I started acting? And he goes, well, you always beat the odds.
I wanted to tell you kind of like a funny little thing. Like my mom told me about you, right? Mm-hmm. And I just briefly looked you up and saw, like you're in some like great stuff, right? And didn't really like go really into it though yet, right? And so then like I start looking into you, I'm like listening to interviews, right? Watching some stuff, and I keep getting this like image of you in my head. And it's like you went in character in like a show, right? And I'm thinking to myself, like, I know I've seen this guy before. Like he's like, it's like I'm literally like burning in my head like a picture of you like in character. I'm like, what is he in? Like, what have I seen him in? I've seen him in something. So then I went to your IMDb and I started like going through the whole thing. And then it was Bosch.
Oh yeah.
So like I watched that. It's because I used to watch a lot of TV shows, right, and movies, and not so much anymore because I'm like a lot busier. But I was like into everything, right? And so like I'm watching, and then like, oh, that's him, because I watched that whole season. I think it's season 4 that you're in. Yeah. You're in the whole season, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I saw him in. So I thought that was really cool. And then yesterday I'm watching, is it Bloodline or Bloodlines? Bloodline. And I remember when that show first came out, I tried to watch it and I was like, I don't really know. And then like a couple of years later, I watched it again, right? And I like watched a lot of the episodes. And then I go back yesterday to watch it. It's been a few years at this point, right? And I'm like, right away you're in. I'm like, holy shit, that's him. Like it was really cool. So like, once again, thank you for doing this.
Just watched it because you wanted to watch it again?
I was kind of researching you, right? And so I'm like, I was going through basically some of your stuff, like just kind of getting a vibe of like what your character was like, right? And then, cause like when in the beginning of the first episode, you're in like a hat and sunglasses. So it's kind of hard to tell it's you, right? And then I'm like, that's him. Holy crap. Like, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh,
so
cool.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. So where I'd like to start is, I kind of start this way with everyone, is did you always want to be an actor, or did you have like another kind of life path you thought you were going to have when you were a young kid?
Both. Yeah. So like you want to be a pro baseball player. I wanted to be a pro hockey player.
Pro hockey player.
And I was a good little hockey player. And then I just, as a little kid, I think the first time I saw Robin Hood, the old Disney animated one with the fox, I was in the movie theaters when I was a kid, and I came home from that and I wanted to be Robin Hood, and I understood it was animated. I was like 4, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that. And then as I got older, I got really into watching TV shows. Everything was in reruns. I grew up in New Jersey, so it was like New York television, and then I got more into that. So my dream was to play hockey in the Olympics, turn pro, play pro. And then I just had this vision of someone like yelling over the glass at the end of the game, like you're done shaking hands. And I just pictured this guy yelling over saying, hey kid, we need you in a movie. And I thought that's how it was going to go.
Okay.
And then I had a freak injury in school, not even on the ice, that took me out of being able to play any contact sports for the rest of my life pretty much. And so I just kind of got so disillusioned and so hurt both physically and emotionally, and then it just changed my whole being. It changed who I could be. I could no longer be the tough little kid that I was. I was a little more fragile. And I just gave up. Like, all right, everyone wants to be a pro athlete or an actor or a rock star or whatever. And then years later, I was backpacking around the world, and some guy in Australia was, hey mate, what do you want to do? And I said, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor. He's like, why don't you do it? And here I am, however many years later. It wasn't all that simple, but that's a nutshell.
Yeah, so I definitely want to dive into that. So you were young when you had that injury. Did you? But I mean, I think it's interesting because let's say that happened when you were maybe like 18 or 19. I think your identity is more tied up and you have more invested in the sport, right? But was it still like pretty devastating as a young kid to not be able to play like contact sports?
Oh my God.
So you like recognize that still at that young of an age, like this was really hard for you.
I think it was even worse.
You do think, okay.
Because I was 10 and a half. I got really, really good at hockey. Not to sound like I'm bragging, but I was a good, I was a good player. And I had scoring records. I was captain on my team, but I also played soccer. I loved soccer. And I played baseball and basketball and everything. And then I had this head injury, and it was really bad. And I wasn't supposed to make it through it, and I did. And then it's like I got out of the hospital and all, and they're just like, okay, this is what happened. You can't play any sports, any contact sports anymore. And you're like, and that's my whole identity since I could walk, So I was given the choice of playing golf or tennis, and I got into tennis and did okay with that. But it was devastating. Like the first time I went to a high school hockey game, I was a freshman, and there were guys on the team who everyone's like, oh my God, they're so, and I was a lot better than they when I was young, and I had to go under the bleachers and just bawl my eyes out. And then I went to a different school where no one really knew me after my injury, and I got bullied really badly. I had to wear a helmet for recess in gym class, and tennis was frowned upon back then. It was a tougher area where I was for this school, and I couldn't fight back. So before my head injury, I don't care if you were like 6 feet, I wasn't afraid to go at you. But now it was like, all right, you can't do anything. So it just totally altered my being, and it really was emotionally crappy.
So when you're in high school, you're playing tennis, right? But it's not, like you said, it's not really cool back then, right? So was that like not a good outlet then for you still?
No, because by the time I got to high school, because once you're, I was varsity freshman year and da-da-da. Once you're playing a school sport, 4-year school, that was cool. That was accepted. And by high school, it was just, when I was younger, like 10, 11, and where I was in Jersey and all, it was just, I played hockey, I played soccer, I did baseball, blah, blah, blah. And then tennis was just kind of, it wasn't what it is now, So, yeah, but by the time I got to high school, no, I play tennis all the time now. I love it. But hockey was my love.
And was that dream of acting only tied to you like going pro in hockey and then being discovered? Or did you still kind of have in high school, were you still thinking like maybe I'll become an actor? Or was it just kind of tennis at that point?
No. I always thought about it, and I always thought, like I'd look at someone else and be like, oh, he'd be good as an actor. He'll get a career. And I just, in high school and things like that, everything was musicals. And I couldn't sing, and I didn't want to, and it just didn't appeal to me. I just liked TV and movies, but I just had, the head injury caused so many issues for me. I just kind of gave up, and I thought, all right, I took some test in high school. It says what you'll be good at, and it was like advertising. I'm like, oh, all right, I guess I'll go into advertising. I don't know.
Okay.
It was kind of like that.
And then I read that you could have played tennis in college, right? But then you went to the University of Richmond, I think, right? So why didn't you decide to play tennis in college and then just go to school? Was there...
Well, I didn't decide at first. I didn't make the team.
Okay.
So I was recruited by Fordham, Rutgers, and Scranton.
Okay.
And I went to visit University of Richmond. I just fell in love with the school. So I was a walk-on, and I was tried out for the team. I was playing very well. And they put me tied for 7th on the team, keeping 10 to 12 players. And the next day I got cut. And I was pissed. So I went to the coach and I'm like, so-and-so's on the team. I beat him, 8-2 in a pro set. This other guy I beat 8-4. And he's just like, well, they had rankings when they were young. They had, these reasons that he had, which I disagreed with. And then the next 3 years I was asked to play at Richmond. And I said no because I had started playing intramurals.
Okay.
Of all the sports I wasn't allowed to play after my head injury.
Okay.
So I'm 18 and I'm, down in Virginia and I'm like, oh, no one can tell me no. And I just got to protect my head and I can play whatever I want. I can play soccer. I just won't head the ball,
So that wasn't as devastating then, not playing tennis, or did you kind of have to get over that too?
I had to get over that too. I mean, that was a real blow to the ego,
Okay.
Especially you're coming out, I wasn't a great player, but I was good. And, I did have offers for college. So it's like, all right. And that's your identity. You're a baseball player and like, I'm going to college and I'm going to play tennis. And then all of a sudden you're cut and you're like, what? And not even like, I didn't feel like I wasn't good enough. It's like, all right, I get it. These guys, I mean, the top players at the school were much better than I, but I could hang.
Mm-hmm. That's funny because I got cut in high school and then I didn't play varsity, and then I had to just play on my own, and then I walked on at my college and then played all 4 years. So it's kind of like reverse,
That's funny. Awesome.
Okay. And then, so you're not playing tennis, but you're playing intramural sports. You're in college. Are you thinking of acting at all at this point? Or are you just, I'm going to have my college experience, like I'm having fun?
I was so clueless. I had no idea.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I wound up being an English major.
Or because was there a reason?
I liked poetry. I liked writing. I liked history. So I was deciding between history and English. And back then they didn't have the diversity of majors that you do now. I mean, now one of my kids is majoring in a cool combo of stuff. They just didn't have that then. It was like you're going to business school, or science or English, or
like 10 majors basically.
Yeah. It's like that.
Some schools are still like that, but yeah.
Yeah. So I was just kind of clueless, and it was always in the back of my head, but I just never thought. I just thought people dream that. It doesn't really happen.
Okay. And so you graduate from college and you don't really have an idea of what you want to do still? Or did you have...
I got out. I always worked for my father through high school and through college, summers, and I would teach tennis and string tennis rackets. But my dad owned a little business where he sold and fixed microscopes.
Okay.
So basically, I did delivery and pickup and sales. So I drove a truck all day, like a Chevy Suburban, and did delivery and pickup of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of microscopes, and that when I got out of school, I worked for him for the summer, taught tennis, strung rackets, and then saved up and went backpacking around the world. And
what was the reason for that? Were you trying to find yourself? Were you trying to figure out like what you wanted to do, or you just always wanted to travel? What was the reasoning for that?
The year before, after my junior year, my cousin was at Richmond also. He was a year older than I, and in that spring, he's like, hey, 4 guys and I are going around Europe this summer after we graduate. Do you want to go? I'm like, yeah. So, put money away, and I went around Europe for 2 months with my cousin and 4 other guys, and I just loved to travel because we had 5 kids growing up, my family, and my dad had his own business, so we didn't really travel anywhere. We'd go see my grandparents because they'd retired in West Virginia, and that was about it. Like we went to Disney World once when I was like 7 or something, right? So here I was going all through Europe, and I met a couple of Australian guys who would travel for like a year at a time. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like you did that. You went traveling for a year, and that's amazing. So I just planned out a trip to go around the world in 4 months, and and I wanted to see New Zealand and Australia and a little bit of Asia, and then circle around to Northern Europe, and
What was your favorite place? Do you have
on that trip? New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yeah, okay. New Zealand was stunning. And then more recently, I did a movie where I went around the world, and I got to go to Ireland, and I love Ireland.
Ireland, okay. Okay. And then, so we kind of talked about before we started recording, one of the Australian guys, like you kind of told me you wanted to be an actor, and he was like, why don't you try it? So were you thinking about it again before that, or that just kind of came up when you were talking to the guy and then you're like, oh, maybe I should try this?
I was driving back from Richmond, 4th of July weekend. I had already graduated, and I went back down, and a buddy of mine lived in Long Island. I lived in Jersey, and I was giving him a ride back. And he's like, what do you want to do with your life? And I said to him, I go, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be an actor. He's like, oh, me too. That's what And this guy was 6'4", full of life, so funny, big personality. And I'm like, oh God, he'll have a career. And I just sort of said it to him. And then I went backpacking around the world, and I was in Perth, Australia, and I was like sparring with a guy because I did martial arts and in the park. We were just, sparring around. And then he asked me, hey, mate, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm like, when I was a kid, I always thought about acting. And he's like, why don't you do it? And that was just that question of like, yeah, why don't I try it at least, And in my mind, when I got back from traveling around the world, I didn't know what a headshot was. I didn't know anything. One of my sisters had been a professional dancer, went to Juilliard and all, so... Wow. But she was away, so eventually she clued me in. But yeah, I just came back, and I lived near New York City. So after some sort of bad trial and error stuff, I started going into New York and started doing plays and all that. Yeah.
Okay, and so like I was listening to some stuff, like you did a podcast, I think like 6 or 7 months ago, and you talked a little bit about the New York experience, right? When you started to go there, it seemed like, well, one, you were like hustling. It seemed like you were very good about like trying to find stuff, right? And two, it seemed like, I don't know, was it a struggle right away, or did you kind of start booking stuff? Maybe it was small, but were you like booking stuff right away and getting work, or was it kind of like it took like a long period of time before you started booking things?
It was both. I started booking a lot of things, not enough to make a living. But it was a long struggle. Like the struggle was a good 12 years before I got an agent that really got me, and before I started making enough to get by. But the first 8-9 years of my acting was in New York City. Okay. I was working for my dad, and then one day a week I would come into New York, and this was, before the internet and all that. So I would map out all the different offices, casting directors and agents that I was going to visit, and I had a backpack full of pictures and resumes, and I would rollerblade all over the city. I mean, that's how I would get around. I just backpack, got off the train or the bus, and got on my skates, and I just went door to door. I mean, I got tossed out of one agency eventually because I would stop by there too much, and they yelling at me to get out. But I started doing plays. I took one class for a while, and I just did play after play after play, and I was booking those, some in Jersey, some in New York, little tiny things. And then I got my SAG card early, just very fortunately. And then I started doing extra work. I did a lot of extra work, a lot of background stand-in work. And back in the 90s, when I was there, rollerblading was huge. And I could pretty much skate with the best of them on blades. So I did a lot of like rollerblading in movies and commercials and stuff.
So it sounds like you were pretty resilient right away. Would you say that you were pretty resilient? And like I said, it sounds like you were like going after it. Like you weren't like it didn't seem like you were really doubting yourself. Like maybe not, like you're at home, like, should I go out today? And you don't go out, I just stay at home or work, right? For your dad. It sounds like, because to me, if it's not like you had this, I mean, you had this dream kind of in the background, it seems like your whole life, or the idea of like acting, right? But it's not like it was like the burning desire your whole life, right? And then you kind of just decide to give it a try. But then also you said you struggled when you were a kid because when hockey was taken away from you, you got kind of like had a hard time with that, right? So I would imagine like being confident was probably hard in your adolescent years. So like why It's like, why right away were you able to just like start like going to New York and like rollerblading around, going to casting directors? Like you said, you got kicked out of one, right? So obviously, like you were very
Got kicked out of an agency.
Agency, sorry. You were very aggressive, it seems, right? And like going after it. So did you always just have that, or like what made you like that? Do you think?
I was always a aggressive athlete, and I was always very scrappy.
But were you like confident, like, oh, I'm gonna make this work, like I can do this? Because you also weren't acting at all, really, right? Like throughout.
No, I mean, I started.
Like you just started. Yeah, you started.
Yeah,
right?
I got my first play in like Ridgewood, New Jersey.
Yeah, and that was the first time you acted, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so to me that's insane, honestly, for someone to have like that resiliency right away. Because acting's, acting's like one of the hardest things I would say to become successful at. Like you have to be really good with being rejected, and you have to kind of. Like maybe it's you're just not right for the character. It has nothing to do with you, but I think people probably take that really personally, right? When they're getting rejected all the time and like.
No, I take it personally.
Okay. You do. Okay.
No, the rejection. As an actor, you're rejected a lot, and I certainly was. I for some reason, I always equate my acting and my career and how I go about it to athletics.
Okay.
So I've been an athlete all my life, whatever level, and I would figure out how to play the sport. In hockey, I started skating at very, very young. My dad built us a little court in our backyard with curbs on it. So in the winter, he would freeze it. So I started skating at like 2 on single blade skates because I had a little rink in my backyard, and soccer, I was pretty good, baseball, all that. And then eventually tennis, I got good enough. And I don't know, I had a determination and I had that sort of athletic drive. So when I started acting, I just saw it as that. And I fell in love with acting immediately.
Okay.
And I felt like I can do this. I have a talent. I think, just like hockey or tennis, and I'll play the way I feel like I can play. And I took this one class for a little bit, and I took an intro class in New Jersey, like a 6-week thing. So I guess the intro class was the first time I acted.
Okay. And then are you, like, while you're going into New York during that time period, are you taking more acting classes, or you're just trying to book work? I took this
one class once a week.
Okay.
So yeah, Mondays was the class. I remember it was like on 22nd Street. And so Mondays I would take off from my dad, go into the class, and then use the rest of the day skating around trying to find agents, managers, and all that. And then I took that class. It was a 6-week class, and I did, a bunch of those 6-week things, I don't know, 4 of them, whatever. And then I stopped that class eventually, and then I would still take the 1 day a week to go around New York. And then at times I had plays, so I'd, be driving for my dad all day, get the train, get back to the shop, get the train into New York, have rehearsals or play or whatever. And then, yeah.
And it sounds like, so your parents were supportive of you wanting to be
an
actor?
I was so fortunate.
Okay.
My mom and dad, who are both still alive, knock on wood, they were always just like, go do it now, try it. And it was interesting because I asked my dad recently, a couple of years ago, I'm like, what did you think when I started acting? And he goes, well, you always beat the odds. Like, I wasn't supposed to live through my head injury. It was really bad. And, the sports, I wound up doing okay. And it was a very interesting thing because my dad, he went to Johns Hopkins pre-med and wound up doing this microscope stuff. So he's a sort of a scientific and business-oriented mind.
Okay.
So for him to say, you always beat the odds, like that was it was interesting. And my mother was, was just always, yeah, go do, as long as, I wasn't a bad kid, and I was, I had a rough childhood with my head injury and all. So I think they just liked that I was, I was working for them, I was helping them, I was making money doing that. I taught tennis, I was driven,
Yeah.
So.
And then, so you were in New York for how long? Like 8 years?
Yeah. So I
Or
graduated.
like in New York, New Jersey, like, yeah.
Yeah, I always lived in Jersey because I
Okay.
couldn't afford
Yeah,
New
you
York.
were just going to New York, but
Yeah.
you're staying in Jersey.
I was
for like,
acting in New York. I consider the beginning of my acting career to be January of 1990.
okay.
And I was there trying to act in New York and all until October of 98. And then I drove out here to California.
And why did you stay so? I might be wrong, but I would imagine if you want to be an actor, you need to probably be in LA. I mean, New York's obviously big too with like plays and stuff, right? But it seems like the best opportunity for you to succeed at it would be if you're in LA. Why did you stay in New York or like in New Jersey and then going into New York for so long? Do you think was it because you had like the support system there? And you were
I
trying,
think because I had this support system.
okay. But were you doubting yourself at all? Or you're like, I'm really gonna have to go after it now if I go to LA.
I didn't really know. And I always thought that Sinatra song, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, New York, New York.
Uh-huh.
So that was kind of my drive. And I didn't really I don't research stuff. I'm not very good at that.
Okay.
What happened was I had a man come into my life who is still a very dear friend. He's, I don't know, 15, 20 years older than I. And he became an incredible mentor to me. His name is Richard Christian. And I ran into Richard, a guy whom I was doing a play with was going to do a play reading of one of Richard's plays. So I met Richard at this play reading of a play that he wrote. And he just took me under his wing. I don't know why, but he saw something in me. And he's like, you have to move to LA. Because if you don't, 10 years are going to go by and you're still going to be schlepping microscopes and you're going to be like, what the hell happened? Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, I really started preparing, all right, if I work another year for my dad and really save up, mm-hmm. I can go to LA and have enough money to live off of for a year or whatever it is. And Richard offered me a studio behind his house to stay in for a few months when I came out.
Okay.
And then consequently, there was a girl who was in grammar school with me who at that time was vice president of Roger Corman's film company. Roger did all like B movies back then. And somehow she got a hold of me and she gave me a part as long as I flew myself out and put myself up in a little movie. I had a couple scenes. So I got to come out and do an actual movie.
Wow. Okay.
And that was before I moved here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that the biggest thing you did at that point, or did you do?
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing you've done.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I did extra work in huge movies, but that was.
So everything though in like on the East Coast essentially was extra work as far as. Like,
no, I did a lot of
plays.
I did a lot of student films. A
lot of student films. Okay.
Some really good ones. And I did a lot of indies, like back then backstage. There's still backstage, right? It was a newspaper. I mean, it's not a newspaper anymore; it's online. But back then, backstage would come out on Thursdays, so I would try to get wherever I could get backstage, and you would just go through, and it'd be looking for an actor for this. Mm-hmm. And back then, it was you mailed in your picture and resume. You licked the stamp and put it on, and mm-hmm. sent it in, and mm-hmm. waited, and so I did do a lot of independent films, some lead roles. And a lot of student films, yeah.
Okay. So then you go to LA, and what was that like in the beginning? Was it like a struggle to find work again, or did you start booking stuff even if it was small? Are you booking things or? Yeah,
kind of both. So okay. I got out here, and then.
And how old are you? Sorry, at this point.
That's okay. I'm 32.
32 at this point. Okay.
Yeah. So I came out to LA. And I called that girl who I went to grammar school with, Cheryl, and she goes, "Well, let's have lunch. I'm over. This is my production company, so I'm here like 2 days." Mm-hmm. I go have lunch with her, and she introduces me to the casting director for for Roger Corman's company, and the casting director was kind to me, but she's like, "You know what? You're not at all right for this. But why don't you just come back later this afternoon after your lunch and just audition for this for me, mm-hmm. just so I can get a feel of what you do." So it was a show called Black Scorpion, I think, and it was kind of like the Batman series from the '60s. That's sort of cheeky, and it was this voluptuous, beautiful girl in a really tight-fitting outfit, and she was like a superhero, and I played like the henchman of the bad guy, and I'd been electrocuted, and they were thinking of hiring really big dudes, And I went in there and I go, just so I understand this, I'm electrocuted, right? And they're like, yeah. So I was like, and I got the role. So I got a role, like I'd been in LA 2 days and I get a role, that's okay, on a TV show. So that was really cool.
Okay.
And then at that point, I would go door to door from however I found out about jobs and leave my picture and resume. Mm-hmm. And I got called in for they were doing this Western movie, and they kept having me back like 3 times to read. And finally the director, they hired me, and we shot in Arizona. And he's like, the minute you walked in and read, I knew I wanted you. I just couldn't figure out what role. So like I got that right away.
Okay. And
then I got an agency that repped me, but they weren't really doing much. And then what happened, I just couldn't get an agent to really get me. So I was getting work, not enough to live off of, but some things. And then this other actor that I worked with, he was like, you should do these casting workshops. And I didn't know what that was. I think actually I'd done 1 or 2 in New York. Mm-hmm. So I started doing these casting workshops where you pay $30-$40 at the time. You go to a studio and you meet with a casting director. It's like a theater, and they tell you what they're doing, and then they have you come up and do scenes, either with another actor from the group or you just read with them. And my wife at the time, she just said, like, this is an investment for you. This is, yes, you're spending all this money on this, but this is your investment in your career. So that was great. She was supportive. Mm-hmm. So I did a boatload of those.
Okay.
And eventually I started getting called in for work from those workshops, and I started booking them, and I was booking a lot. And that sort of got me going. And then eventually this agent had heard of me, Kim Dorr, whom I'm still very close with, from a casting director named Sandy Logan. And Kim was like, had heard about me from something, and Sandy's like, Jamie's looking for an agent. Do you want to meet with him? So I met with Kim and fell in love with her and as my agent. And once I got with Kim, I started getting auditions because she was getting me work and auditions, and I started booking a lot of those, and that's kind of how my TV career got going.
I want to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
So when you move here when you're 32, are you married at that point? Or no?
No, my ex and I had been dating. We sort of dated just a couple months, but we had grown up together as little kids, so I knew her all my life.
Okay.
She'd been away living in Vermont.
Okay.
She had just moved back to Jersey. We started dating, and I'm like, I'm leaving in 2 months, so let's have fun for 2 months. And she's like, all right, yeah, And then, we fell in love, and eventually we just kind of dated long distance, and eventually I went back and proposed, and yeah.
Okay. But so like during that time before you meet Kim, what's the timeline there? Like a couple of years, or is it like a year, or how long?
Of being in LA?
Yeah, being in LA from like you get to LA, and then before you meet Kim, where you
probably
start,
2 years.
2 years. So during that 2 year period, you're doing long distance with your ex-wife, or she's there at that point?
At some point, Maura moved out. Yeah,
okay.
We got married and she moved out.
But you don't have kids yet either, right?
No kids.
Okay.
Yet.
So like what I kind of want to get an idea of is what's your mental state during that period of you moving to LA when you're 32 and then before you meet Kim? Are you still confident, like I love acting and I can do this? Or are you like struggling mentally? Are you like, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought it was? Are you struggling for money? Like where you're like, where's the next, how am I going to pay rent? Like what is that like for you?
I had put away money.
Okay.
I was okay, and I had invested some, and at the time it was doing very well.
Okay.
And then when Maura and I got married, she's still a school teacher.
Okay.
So we had her income. Mm. And then when we got married, that also wound up being the first year that I made enough to get by.
Okay.
So we had her income, and I was making enough to get by, and then it increased every year.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Okay.
So yes, the struggle to get work, it's still a struggle to get work. I mean, still, I still audition these days. But yeah, it changed. The casting workshops helped me get to another level. Also because I was doing so many of them that I was working on my craft all the time, and I was working on stuff specific to television shows or movies. And, my game got better, I guess. And then I got with Kim, and she literally went to one casting director, John Levy, and she said, John, you have to see this actor. And he goes, no, I don't want to see him. And she goes, John, I will stake my career on this actor. So he saw me for ER, and I booked it. And
Wow.
John's hired me quite a bit since.
Okay. So I was looking up your IMDb, and while I was researching it, I read that I think, so it was 24 was 24 your big break where you got kind of like a recurring role? Cause I think you were on 6 episodes of that. And that was like the first time where you were on multiple episodes, I think, of something, right? So at that, like, how old are you at that point when you get 24? Do you remember? Like, how far into being in LA are you when you get that? Or would you even consider that like a big like deal for you?
Yeah,
Is that
it was,
kind of the biggest deal like in the beginning?
I got 24 through tennis.
Through tennis, really?
Yeah, because Joel Surnow was one of the creators of that show, and he was an avid tennis player. And someone hooked me up to play doubles with him, and I didn't say anything about my acting or anything. And then we played a few more times, and he had seen me in an episode of Nip Tuck, right around when we started playing. And he's like, all right, you got chops. And he eventually brought me in to read for a role where the character got killed immediately on 24. And I read for him, and he goes, all right, listen, you're fantastic. Do you want this role or not? And I'm like, well, I want to work. So if this is what you're offering, absolutely. He goes, okay, let me think about it, because you get killed in this, and I might want you around longer. So he said, no, I don't want you to do this. We'll wait. And then eventually another role came up, and they gave me 6 episodes, or 5 or 6 or whatever it was. Yeah.
Okay. I kind of want to walk through this then. So when you find out you got that role, once again, your mental state, are you really excited? Are you nervous? Do you feel like this is a really big deal now, and you're kind of like doubting yourself? Yeah. Are you doubting yourself? Like, cause like it's a 6 episode thing. Or are you confident at that point?
I never doubted what I could do. Ironically, on 24 was the first time, knock on wood, only time though so far, I really screwed up.
Okay.
Because he didn't have me take the role I auditioned for. A couple of weeks go by, we play tennis, whatever, maybe a couple months. And then one day I get a call, and I know I've got at least one kid by then. Maybe I had both, because they're like, hey, Jamie, what are you doing tomorrow? Kastner called me. And I'm like, and I didn't know what they wanted. I'm like, well, I got to get one kid to school. I got to, and they're like, oh, well, we have a job for you. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So it was like they called me that day or afternoon, and I was to work the next day on 24. Well, I didn't really know the show, and everything was so secretive. And I had a lot of lines.
Was it a big deal at that point, 24?
Yeah.
Or was it was a big, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had a lot of lines, and always memorization came very quickly to me. So I worked on my stuff. I had it down. I got my kids here and there, and blah, 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 and get a sitter to watch my kids. And I go to work, and it was the first time in my career where I couldn't remember my lines. Wow. Because I didn't know what I was talking about. And I kept screwing up, and Mr. President, and then just crickets. Like, that was my first line. I couldn't remember. And then it gets worse and worse, because you're screwing everything up.
This is the first day on set.
First day on set. 24.
Okay.
So Joel wasn't there. I go home that night. I'm bawling my eyes out. I'm like, oh my God. Joel calls me the next morning. I'm like laying in the dark. He's like, buddy, how'd it go? I'm like, Joel, I screwed up. He goes, what? I go, I'm so sorry. You gave me this incredible opportunity, and I totally screwed it up. He goes, what do you mean you screwed up? And he's being kind. And I told him what happened. He goes, all right, you didn't screw up till I tell you screwed up. He goes, I'll call you later. The whole day goes by. I don't hear from him. I am so down. And he calls me late in the day. He's like, Jamie, listen, you did fine. There was a lot of issues on set that day. It wasn't just you. There were some other things. We got everything we needed. Don't worry about it. I'm like, okay. And then they hired me for 5 more episodes, so it was okay, and I redeemed myself. But I did have a stretch there for a year or two where, if you get the yips, okay.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, the yips is a term where you get nervous and you can't do what you normally could do. There was a famous pro player or something who couldn't get the ball from second base to first, like he just screwed up or something.
Yeah, like like a pitcher can't even throw a strike.
Yeah.
You just you launch it or you throw it in the dirt. Yeah.
And I wound up having that in tennis for a long time, where I used to have this great serve, and then I just got the yips. And I got the yips, ironically, because I was playing doubles with Joel Surnow. He was my partner, and I hit a really hard serve, and I hit him square in the back of the head. And I just saw my whole career go. I was like, oh, crap. And then I got the yips for a long, long time, where I'd go to serve, and I'd just be, nervous. So I'm just coming out of that. Anyway, so 24, for then the next couple of years, I wasn't memorizing as well. I worked, I auditioned, everything was fine, but I had the yips about memorization.
So that first day, though, on 24, where you're not, like you said, they got what they needed. So it's not like you just couldn't do it, right? Like maybe you're messing up scenes, but you got through it, right?
I couldn't remember my lines.
So how does that work then? Could you just not do the scene? Yeah. Could you just not do the scenes then that day, or did you get through the scenes?
I'm hired to do it. I mean, I have to get it done. I have to stumble through it.
And you got it done though.
I got it done, right? But it was embarrassing.
Yeah. Okay. And
it was humiliating.
Okay. And so who's in those scenes with you? Is it Kiefer Sutherland at that point, or
no?
You're like Jack Bauer's there, and you're like,
no, it wasn't Kiefer, but it was the president. And the president of the show, I forget his name now, the Allstate guy. I'm so sorry, I forgot his name. Wonderful guy. But anyway, he was, there was Kiefer, and then there was this guy who played the president. So my scenes were with him, and he was very nice about it. He goes, "It's okay, buddy." So, yeah.
And then, so when you do those next 5 episodes, though, were you on episode 2? You're really worried, or did you how? I
had more time, like I said, I just got the stuff the night before.
Yeah. And that seems but you're probably expected to do that, right? If you get something the night before, you still have to. Okay. Yeah. Cause that to me seems really hard to do,
So by episode 2, I had more time to prepare. Okay. I knew what I was talking about. Okay. I knew the people.
But are you thinking about episode 1 still? Is that in your head that day, or are you kind of because you played, it is still in your head?
I'm thinking about episode 1 right now.
Do you think sports, though, your whole life helped with that? The mentality of, because it is a very similar thing, right? You're doing different things, but that.
Yeah, I didn't feel like that specifically was I could not remember the lines.
Okay.
All the other stuff, whatever the acting is, but that's the key to acting, memorizing the lines. Yeah, I screwed that up. But I came around.
And then is 24 of those 6 episodes, is that a good payday, or is it just it's going to help your career because it's a big show and people there's more eyeballs on you, or is that something where you can kind of breathe a little bit too? Because it was
both. I mean, it was a big payday for me at the time.
Okay.
And I got paid differently. If you're in one day, maybe you get a day rate, but if you're in multiple days, you get what's called top of show, which is they pay you for each day.
Okay.
For a week. So 24 definitely helped that I was recurring. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I got Sons of Anarchy, and that was a big change for me.
Okay. And how did you get Sons of Anarchy? How did that come?
I auditioned.
You'd auditioned for that?
I auditioned for the pilot to play the deputy, which Taylor Sheridan played.
Okay.
Who created Yellowstone and all that.
Yes.
He was an actor first. So Taylor had gotten that role. And then they had me back to read for an Irish role. I read for that. I didn't get it. It went to someone else. And then that actor who got that role was doing another show on the East Coast, and that show wouldn't let him go back to do another episode of Sons. So they had to kill him off. So they wrote in that he had a cousin.
Okay.
And I don't even think I auditioned for the role I wound up getting, but I had auditioned for the Irish role before. And they were going to offer me like a 2-line, 3-line role as a bartender, possible recurring, but it wasn't going to recur. And there was the person who was directing that episode, his name's Guy Ferland. He's a wonderful director, wonderful man. And I had worked with him on a show called Blind Justice, where I had a huge guest star.
Okay.
And that was for Stephen Bochco. And Guy looked at who they were looking to cast, and I found this out years later from Guy. But he said to Kurt Sutter, the creator of Sons of Anarchy, he goes, "You want to use this dude," meaning me, for the bartender? He goes, "You're going to waste him." He goes, "I'm telling you, I've worked with him. He should be in this role." So Kurt was like, okay. So I got this role on Sons, playing an Irish guy, and apparently Kurt really liked what I brought to the table. So then I was told he wound up writing for my character in season 2.
Okay. And then from there, are you booking more recurring roles, or is it a lot of like one episode stuff, or like at that point in your career?
It's still a lot of one episodes.
Okay.
A lot of one episodes, occasional recurring roles. Sons, you got.
And you're making a living at this point
I'm
off
making
of
a
acting?
living, yeah.
Off of acting,
And,
okay.
making a living, granted now I got kids and, so yeah.
And how old were you when you booked that? Do you remember? Like how far into
Yeah, I'm
being
trying
in
to think
LA?
what year was Sons. I guess it was.
2008 to 2010.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, so
2008, I guess I was 42.
42.
I think.
Okay, 42. Yeah, I have the whole. I'm gonna start using this actually. So then I have Southland the next. It seems like it was the next year after Sons kind of ended.
Yeah, 42.
And you were on 19 episodes of that.
Yeah,
right?
Southland was wonderful. That was such a good show. Really good people. I auditioned for that. Chris Chulak, who was the showrunner, liked what I did, and I got this role as this squad sergeant. And that show, man, they shot so quickly, so proficiently, and everything was handheld, and I was fortunate. I was recurring, but I was always in the squad room. And then Michael Cudlitz, who was one of the leads on that show, was very good to me. I had a lot of scenes with him. He was very kind to me. And one day I guess they were going to audition someone to play a cop who was going to be in a bar scene with Michael. And he went to the creators or whatever, and he's like, "What are you doing? Get Jamie out of the squad room, put him in a bar." He goes, he's great. Put him in. He goes, "Otherwise we're going to spend half the day trying to get an actor to be a little more understated like we do." And so that's what Michael told me. But yeah, it was cool. And then just a year ago, I did a short film for Michael that he directed, and his wife wrote, called On Earth as It Is in Heaven. That's going to festivals now.
And then it seemed like you hadn't done any movies really at that point, but then in 2014 there's Gone Girl, Nightcrawler, like you're in those movies, right? So
was that the same year?
That was 2014 is when they came out though.
Yeah,
you probably filmed them earlier, right? But when they came out, it was 2014.
I had little bits. I had a tiny bit in Thor, I had a tiny bit in Avengers, tiny.
And are those okay? So are those like just it's cool to be on set and you get to meet people, but like is that a good payday at all, or no? You're just kind of doing it to be like a part of it essentially.
Well, it's everything. I mean, it's a huge film. I mean, I have a part.
Yeah.
You're in it.
Yeah.
I get residuals from it. So in the long run, it's a good payday.
Okay.
Those shows have so many stunt people, and they get a lot of, deservedly, of the residuals, from what I'm told. But yeah, it's everything. You're part of that universe, and you know you get residuals. And the cutest thing was I was at my kids' school. They were in grammar school then, and this little boy, God, he must have been like 6, 7 years old, and he comes running up to me. He goes, "Liam's dad, Liam's dad, Liam's dad," because he didn't know my name. I go, "Yes." He goes, "I saw you on the Avengers," and I wore the same hat. Like they let me wear it in the Avengers. He goes, "I saw you on Avengers, and you had your hat on." This is adorable. It was the cutest thing. Yeah.
It is really cute. Are moments like that like a big deal for you? Like kind of keep you going, and like that's probably a cool thing, right?
Yeah, it's magical.
Okay.
It really is. Like, especially when it's a little kid who's just so innocent and so excited. Yeah, I did my first Comic-Con a couple weeks back in Liverpool. And, you know, it's neat when, you know, for anything you do, if someone recognizes you, you work at a bank and they think you're wonderful because you helped them and you did your job well, that feels good. It's the same thing with acting, except the visibility is a lot different, you know? So when people come up to you, you know, and say nice things about your career, or they're just excited because they're a kid and they saw you, it's all pretty amazing.
Okay, and then so 2014 to 2016, then you're in Murder in the First, another 19 episodes. So is that something you auditioned for, or did you have?
I did. No,
you
I
auditioned
did.
For that? Okay.
So Stephen Bochco was groundbreaking in television. You know, the shows he came up with, Hill Street Blues, NYPD Blue, blah, 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 a lot of stuff. And he was a wonderful, wonderful man. And he was very loyal to crew, to everyone. And one of my first big breaks that I got from a casting workshop from this casting director named Scott Jenkinger. And I would say Scott got my career going.
Okay.
Scott started hiring me, and then eventually I got Kim after Scott. So I'd say Scott, then Kim, and then, you know, my manager now, Devin. So Bochco's Murder in the First was one of Stephen Bochco's show. I think it was his last show. And I auditioned, and they liked me, and they hired me, and they kept writing me in. I played the coroner. And Stephen was... and his son Jesse, and just extremely good to me. Love those people.
And then Bloodline's 2015 to 2017. So is that, I'd say that's like, would you consider that like the big break?
Yeah.
Is Bloodline?
That was the game changer.
Yeah. And so what was that process like? Another thing you auditioned for? Or didn't someone know you? It was either a producer or someone else, I think, right? Or no?
No, that one I auditioned for.
That one you did audition for. Okay.
Apparently, Todd Kessler, one of the creators of the show, he had recognized me from other stuff. I think Sons or whatever, I don't know. But I auditioned for that twice. You know, I did I read for the casting, and then they had me back.
So sorry, really quick. I just want to. So I think I was looking. Isn't Kyle Chandler in Gone Girl? I think.
No,
he's not. He's in it. He was in something else you were in before. I don't remember what it. I can't remember what it was.
He was in Argo.
That's what it was, Argo.
He had a big part, yeah.
So I was kind of curious about that, because you kind of mentioned it already with maybe like producers or people on the production side of like, you know them, and then they like, oh, like Jamie would be good for this, right? But did you meet him on the Argo set, and was he aware of, you didn't meet him at all? Because he's obviously like the main character in Bloodline, right? So,
yeah.
But it's not like he was like, oh, I know Jamie from this thing.
No.
Okay.
No, we met at the read-through down in Florida when we were already cast.
Okay.
And he still to this day is one of the best friends I've ever had in my life.
Really?
Yeah, Kyle is amazing. Great guy.
Friday Night Lights. Love that show.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, but so you auditioned for Bloodline.
I auditioned for Bloodline, and it was interesting because Netflix wasn't Netflix yet. They had House of Cards, I think Orange is the New Black. And they had this audition, and the character was described as long hair, skinny, tattooed guy from the Keys. I'm like, okay, I'm 0 for 4, you know. So what do I do here? And I'd never been away from my kids very long, you know, a couple weeks here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And this was to do a series in Florida. And I'm like, you know, my kids were 15, well, they're like 10 and 8 or whatever they were. And I'd been Mr. Mom, you know, pretty much. So I wasn't that interested in this job, but, you know, they knew they were going to have Sissy Spacek and Sam Shepard, so I knew it was a huge job. And I can't say I wasn't interested. I wasn't like, oh my God, I have to get this, because it was in Florida and I'd never been away from my kids, and it was just like a little daunting for me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got the sides to audition, the pages of the script, I'm like, all right, what do I want to do with this? And then I read it, and I immediately knew what I wanted to do, that I could bring as Jamie, as this character, and how he dressed and walked and all that. And so I wore like a bandana, you know, over my head, and, you know, crappy old, you know, sort of Floridian clothes. And I had an audition. It went extremely well. And then they had me back to read for producers. Only Glenn Kessler was in the room. And I read for them. And that was it. They just called me, you know, my agent manager a little while later. And, you know, he booked this. And I was like, whoa, I'm doing a series regular.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge difference, money, financially, and just being a part of the fabric of a team. And it was going to be in Florida, and it was going to be with Sissy and Kyle and Sam Shepard, and it was like, oh my God! And I've got to be away from my kids, and how does that work out? I got to, you know, my ex, yeah, my Maura and I were separated at the time, and she's always been extremely supportive. And, you know, because it's financially well for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, we figured it out. And that job, everything about it was just altered my career. It was such an amazing opportunity to get to be in and to play that character. And, yeah.
So is that, as far as how, like, the process of that on set, is that different than, because you've at this point you've been on a couple of shows, like the 2 19 episode ones, right? So, and now you're like a series regular, right? And you're on multiple seasons. It was 33 episodes for Bloodline. Is the way you approach it different? Is like your mentality on set different? Because you're kind of like more of the guy now, right? As opposed to
No, I'm still a supporting player.
Uh-huh.
It's just I happen to get a guarantee of how many episodes I'm going to get and all that. So no, the approach is still the same. It's still just like how you approach athletics. You know, you get ready and, you know, you play your best. And
does it feel bigger though? Or are you kind of, once again, is your mind like, are you kind of like doubting yourself at all, or no? You're like at this point you're
the character was so. I have an interesting story about that character. The character was so familiar to me. And they really let me just, that show was amazing, because it seemed like, you know, network will often get involved. Like, to put it, you know, another way, the suits get involved in the art. And then that diminishes sometimes because, and I don't mean to be derogatory, but just a way to describe it. But, you know, some people come in and they're amazing at business, and then they're trying to tell you how to paint a painting, and that's not your thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You can sell the painting.
Mm-hmm.
On Bloodline, it seemed to me, they let the show creators do their thing.
Okay.
And they hired who they wanted. Knock on wood, I was one of them. And they let us play. They let us go. And, you know, Ben Mendelsohn was unbelievable, and so was the whole cast. I mean, it was such an amazing cast. So what was different was, like, the first time we had the read through, I met Kyle, I met Sissy and everyone, and I was staying in this little shack at the time. I didn't know where I was going to live yet, and I didn't have a car. And in the Keys, it's one road going north and south. That's it. And I had to go to this party that evening, a dinner. And I'm like, well, how do I get there? Like, you know, there weren't Ubers yet, and especially down there. And I'm like, do I get a cab? And then I'm like, well, it's one road. I know Sissy lives up there, and she gave me her phone number. So I called Sissy Spacek. I'm like, hey, Sissy, it's Jamie. Hey, Jamie, how you doing? I'm like, so I'm good. Is there any way you could give me a ride to the party because you're coming down that way? And Sissy's like, of course I will, Jamie. So I look out the window of where I'm staying. I'm like, okay, at mile marker this, there's an abandoned Chevron station. She goes, okay, I'll get you there, and then I go, and Sissy Spacek is giving me a ride.
Wow.
And when we went to this party at this outdoor restaurant, I'm walking in with Sissy Spacek, and Kyle had just parked, and I'm walking in with Kyle, and that was like, oh my God, I'm part of this. And people started singing Coal Miner's Daughter from Sissy's, she won the Academy Award, I think, for that. And everyone, all heads are turning because of Kyle and Sissy, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm part of this. That's unbelievable. And then the work was, just amazing.
Was that the first time you felt like I'm part, like that feeling, that reaction? That was the first time in your
like I felt
to that point.
I felt, I had my thing in Sons, and they were very nice to me, and Southland was wonderful. I was doing Murder in the First at the same time as Bloodline. That happened to work out season wise. I definitely felt like I was a part of that. But this, I was a regular. I'm like 7th on the call sheet, and it was just amazing, especially to be in the Keys, to get to that part of the world where you're lucky if you get there once to vacation in your life, and I'm there, 3 seasons as part of the fabric of the community. It's cool.
And you said it in another, I think it was another podcast, you said your brother called you, I think a couple years into it, and he basically told you like, you're playing me?
No.
Or no?
You're on the right track.
Okay.
So when I got the sides and I auditioned for that, I immediately knew what I wanted to do. And I'd been estranged from my brother for a while. At the end of season 2, I get a call. I didn't know it rang, and I checked my voicemail, and it's the first time I'd heard my brother's voice in a number of years. And I stopped, and I'm like, oh my God, I've been playing him for 2 seasons. I've been playing my brother. And I had no clue. I didn't realize the cadence of the voice, the ba, ba, ba. Like, I'm like, holy shit, I've been playing him. That was weird.
So is it easier then to, like, are you always drawing from experience in your roles, or is it sometimes you don't have the experience and then that makes it harder? Like if you can't draw from anything, like it seems like I was watching it yesterday, right? And you're amazing in that. Like you're so good.
Thank you.
And so is it easier that, I mean, obviously you weren't aware of it when you started, but is it easier to be able to draw from something, whether it's a person or an experience for you in your roles?
Yeah, I have 2 brothers, and they're both interesting characters. One's older, the other younger. And I've often played, all right, this is my brother John if this happened. I did Deadwood. My younger brother Josh, who's the one I sounded like to me in Bloodline. I'm like, oh, okay, this is Josh in 1876 if this and this happened, and so that I've played my versions of things of them over the years. But then also it's, you just create stuff out of the blue for other characters. Like the kind of quirky coroner I played on Murder in the First. I mean, that was just me, having fun, and what's different? What can I do that's different that I haven't really done, or, stuff like that. Yeah.
And at this point with Bloodline, like after Bloodline, let's say, are you still just whatever interests you, you want to book it? Or like, are there like roles that you don't necessarily want anymore? Do you feel like you're being typecasted at all? Do you want to do something different, or you're just happy to like be working and like doing something you're interested in? That sounds I'm
happy to be working.
You're happy to be working.
I help pay for a lot of people. Just that's the way life is, kids and, colleges and all that. So I'm just happy to work.
Okay.
I did have a guy, a good actor who works a lot, come up to me in the last year or two, and he's like, "Man, you get all the great jobs. How do you pick and choose?" And I'm like, "I don't think I've ever picked and chosen like." It wasn't until after Bloodline that like there was a pilot I wasn't as interested in at first, and my manager was like, "Buddy, you don't have to do something if you don't want to." I'm like, "What?" He goes, No. If you don't like something, it doesn't gel for you. You don't have to audition for it." I'm like, "Oh." But I just want to work, and yeah, whatever I can get. Unfortunately, some of them have been pretty neat things.
So then Bosch is in 2018, season 4, and you're on that for 9 episodes. So is that once again something you auditioned for, or was that something
I did? I auditioned for that
too?
It was interesting because I was we actually shot in 2017.
Okay.
I was finishing Bloodline, and I got a call to do this pilot, which wound up going to series, and I was in the series, about the murder of Tupac and Biggie. And I didn't audition. Someone knew me, and the writer was like, "I've always liked this guy. This guy, I'd like him for this character." So they wound up flying me from Florida to shoot the pilot, and then I had to go back to Bloodline to wrap up. But my principal filming was done on Bloodline, but they weren't positive yet. And then that wound up going to series, and then I auditioned for Bosch, and it was amazing because they filmed literally at the same time. So I was doing the Biggie Smalls thing called Unsolved, and I was doing Bosch, all in the same 5 months or 4 months or whatever. And I literally had one day where I had to be at Bosch at 6 a.m. and then get to Universal by noon to film the Biggies thing, and then get back to Bosch by 5. And as an actor, you're like, this is incredible. I'm on 2 shows, really good shows, playing fun characters.
Really, I love Bosch. Bosch is such a good show.
And with, amazing people, I got to work with Titus and, Jimmy Simpson in Unsolved. And it was just an amazing time.
And then, so 2019, after that, there's The Passage. And I watched a lot of interviews with that one, actually, with you. And to me, it seemed like that one you really liked, it seemed. And it seemed fun. But it didn't get picked up. It was 1 season, right? So was that really hard? Because it's like I said, it seemed like you seemed really enthusiastic in like the interviews I watched about that show. And like you even, have you read the books or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you asked the interviewer in one of the videos, like, oh, have you read the books? And you seemed like really excited about it. And so I like watched that one a little bit yesterday just to kind of get a vibe. And you're like, I'm really good in that one too. Like I really liked you in that, even though I was just skipping through scenes and stuff, but like, I was like, yes, that's like, he's like doing so good with that. Right. So, I mean, I have the right idea. Like that was one, and you're also like you're in a big role in that show specifically, right? So like, is that really hard once it doesn't get picked up, or are you just happy to have had that experience? Because that's like a different.
It's extremely hard when it doesn't get picked up, because one of the things, as an actor, is when you are a series regular, which is again amazing, and I was the lead bad dude on this show, and I was a bad dude, like. And he was such a layered character, because he went from scenes of where he's a monster to where he's sort of telepathic, and then it was such a fun role. It had so many levels to it. And again, you're a series regular. We shot in Atlanta. It was a wonderful cast, everyone, and I'm having a great time. I'm making good money. But when you finish filming a show, you're held under a contract that you're committed to that show until they let you go. Either they say, we're going season 2, or they say, we're not going, or we're not going to pick up your option. But you're on hold for that until you can't audition for other. You can do recurring to a certain point, and you're only really supposed to do 3 episodes of another show. That's why with Murder in the First, I lucked out, because I had done Murder in the First, then booked Bloodline. Okay. They worked it out in my contract that I could do episodes of Murder in the First when I was off season. And the creators of Bloodline, at first I was getting flack from, network or someone, that I was going to do more than 3 episodes, and the creators of Bloodline called the network or whatever, and they're like, let him do as many of it as he wants of another show. It's not affecting us in a bad way. It's only good, and he's a totally different character. So they really went to bat for me. So with The Passage, you shot the first season, got paid very well, and then you're like, all right, I'm guaranteed 10 episodes in season 2 at a certain pay amount and a little bit of an increase. So you're like, okay, that would pay for laid out colleges, whatever. Yeah. And at the time, I was renting a house with my girlfriend, and the house, they were going to sell it. So we had to move, and I'm, looking around to buy or rent, and extremely stressful. And I'm not totally banking on, but I'm banking on this series going a second season. And I wound up buying the house because I had to, and then the show got canceled.
Wow.
So it was like, okay, don't have that money coming in. So that was tough, and I loved that. I loved the show. I loved the character, and also I knew I wasn't going to get killed off because in the book series, I'm there till the end.
So you read the book series before the show was ever getting made, or did you?
No.
Preparation for the show.
For the show.
You in preparation for the show.
I had the audition that went extremely well, and I booked it, and then I'm like, oh, I should read these books.
Okay. And I guess it's maybe a little different because you hadn't read the books beforehand, but is it a little different if there's like source material where it's like you feel like it should be portrayed a certain way, like the overall show, and then maybe they, like the directors, producers, whatever, the showrunners have a different idea that's different from the books? Did you have any of that, you know what I mean, where like you kind of like, oh, it should be this way, but then they're thinking it's a different direction?
No, because one, I got the audition, and obviously I didn't have time to read the books before the audition. I just got to memorize my lines.
Yeah.
But I knew, like Bloodline, I knew what I wanted to bring to the character in the audition, and hopefully they like it, But this feels right to me. Like, all right, I got this. I don't know that I'll get the job, but for me, delivering my work, I'm in. For me, whether they like it or not, we'll see, and I'll take direction, whatever. But ultimately, as an actor, I'm hired to bring what I bring to the table, but to put onto film their vision, the writer, the director, the show creator. So I don't really find the conflict. I haven't yet, because that's my job. And you hired me because you liked what I did, so that's good. There's some of that. And some shows, they're just like, go, do. And then other shows, they'll tweak you more. And I like it both. I love being directed.
Did you draw any personal experience or anyone you knew in your personal life in that role, or was that simply just like, because you said you kind of had an idea of how you wanted to play it. Did you know where that came from, or it just kind of?
No, I don't really. It was just, he was so evil and so manipulative, and I just thought he had fun. Like, he's fun. He's a fun dude. Like, he's not heavy and dark, and this is great. I'm gonna rule the world. This is pretty cool, So I kind of felt it that way, and they responded to it.
So, and then so Busman's Holiday I wanted to talk about. I watched it actually last night.
Oh, you did? Thank you.
Of course, yeah, it was good. I liked it a lot. I wasn't really expecting the ending, but yeah, that was really good. So I wanted to talk about that because I thought that was interesting. So I think you said it in the podcast I watched, you said it was like a passion project, and one of your good friends, I think, directed and wrote it, right?
Yeah, a very dear, go ahead.
And then it's like, was it a like two or four person crew, like very small, right? Like so kind of walk me through, like, how did that come about, I guess? Like, did he just hey, Jamie, I have this thing.
So my dear friend, Austin Smithard, who's known as Chief, you just call him Chief. Chief is a Brit. He came over 1 million years ago and worked for Spielberg. And he had a great commercial directing career. Commercials dried up, and different things, and I introduced him to his wife, and he's got 2 kids, and so I was just getting done with Bloodline, and he was going to do this film called Busman's Holiday, and he had a buddy of his who was a Brit who was going to play the lead, play Busman, and I was going to have another little role as a cop or something. And I remember I was getting out of the van on Bloodline to go work a courtroom scene where they're convicting me, and real heavy stuff, and Chief was calling me, he's like, mate, Harry can't do the film, can you, I'm like, all right, what does this entail? He's like, we're gonna go around the world for a month. I'm like, okay. So in my mind, I'm like, I gotta talk to my ex, I gotta work out with the kids, I gotta talk to my girlfriend, we live with her kids, and like, I gotta get all logistics, and I've been away on Bloodline for so long. So I'm like, what's the latest I can let you know by? And he's like, this date. I said, okay. He wanted to go earlier. I'm like, can we do it May? He worked it all out. So anyway, I convinced that, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. So Chief is a very dear friend, and he basically bankrolled the whole movie.
Wow.
So he wound up having to sell his house and all that, and but it was his passion project, and I'm the lead in it, and it was just Chief and 2 other guys, Mark and crap, I'll think of his name in a minute. I picture him and just went blank. There were 4 guys, 3 guys and me, and we went around the world together. We flew from LA to Ireland, and we stayed in Airbnbs everywhere except in Mumbai, India. And we shot in the Airbnbs. We told them we were coming and this is what it was. And Chief did everything. I mean, sound, he told me what to wear, and and I just had to carry on to go around the world. And the other 2, one guy was on the computer setting up the flights and making sure actors were lined up, and the other guy was kind of doing any grunt work he had to, holding the boom, whatever. And I was as much crew as they, It's like, all right, we got to move this couch. Let's move the couch, but it was amazing. We went Ireland, and then we took 3 flights to a tiny fishing village in Norway, and then we went to 2 different locations in Italy. Then we went to Mumbai, India, and then we went to Zanzibar, Africa, and then Sydney, Australia, and then we drove up a bit north of Sydney. It was just amazing. And to get to do the lead in something was really neat. And I went around the world, second time in my life with a very dear friend of mine and 2 other great guys. And did what I love to do, it was incredible.
Yeah, I want to get an idea. That's so interesting, like the small crew. So like one person's got a boom mic, one person's filming. Is that, and then it's like the actors? Is that basically all it is? Is the part of the production side or the crew?
Yeah, Chief had like his film camera or whatever.
And what is he filming on? An actual like camera you would use in like any other show, or is he using like a smaller?
Like he would use it on commercials and stuff.
Okay.
Like I don't know much about cameras about this big.
Okay, and he's just holding it basically.
Yeah,
is it on a stand? Any shots like that or not?
I think he had a tripod, but he also had a lot of handheld. But then he also had a little tiny camera, like this big, like you would, like a.
Yeah.
But it had the same resolution as the big camera.
Yeah.
So he would film me getting on and off planes. Like we flew through Dubai and Abu Dhabi and different airports to get to different places, and he would just steal this amazing footage. And he's always called me Hackman after Gene Hackman. And he would just be like, Hackman, wait, don't get off yet. Okay, grab your bag, go. Like, and Hackman, go down, come back up the escalator, Hackman. It was really fun.
So logistically too, do you need permits for any of the filming, or are you just like kind of like what you just said? You're just like, okay, we're gonna do it now. Like we're in the airport, we just gotta do it.
He just kind of did guerrilla style, and
that seems so fun, honestly.
It was amazing.
Seems like a lot of fun.
It was just, and he would just pick up like we'd be walking. I remember like the last day we're gonna fly back from Sydney. He's like, Hackman, go through that door, and I'm like. I think it revolved the opposite way because it was, in Australia they drive on the other side of the street. I don't know if I'm remembering that right. I'm like, Chief, can I walk in like the wrong way first? Because I'm not, he goes, yeah. So I don't remember if that was in it or not, but there were different things of, it's very creative and spontaneous.
Yeah, there's a scene when you're on a plane and it's like a 1 or 2 second shot where it's like you from like this way, right? And it's very quick. And I'm thinking in my head, like they have to have just done that, like just on the plane, like going somewhere, right? And they just filmed that. So, and then like, for example, in Italy, in that house, amazing, beautiful house, like when you come out in the backyard and there's like I don't know if they're olive trees or just trees, but it's like beautiful, right? So that was an Airbnb.
Yeah.
And you just filmed there. That's
and
crazy.
Stayed there.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And we would cook, we'd cook together and it was interesting because when we left Norway the last day, we went out to lunch and Chief paid for all our food. He paid for everything except booze. So it was all out of his pocket for the three of us. We went out to lunch and Chief and Mark had a fish stew. And we go to Italy and we're staying in the first place in Italy. And the owner of the Airbnb is this famous chef, and he's cooking all our meals.
Wow.
Well, Chief and Mark Vance got so sick from the fish stew that they couldn't eat for a couple of days. Like Chief was laid out, so we lost filming time. And then he got really sick when we got to Zanzibar, Africa. Like we weren't sure he was going to make it sick.
Wow.
They had to get a doctor. We're in the middle of nowhere. And the owners of that place had to call in some doctor and he had to get penicillin, I don't know what it was. So we lost several days of filming and he still got it all done.
Wow. And the actors and actresses in all these different countries, are you kind of just like, are you thinking like, oh, this person would be good for the role, or are you just trying to get people basically?
No, he had it all lined up.
He
auditioned people all online or looked people up and they had actors lined up everywhere, but then a lot of background people, he'd just say, do you want to be in this movie? Here's $50, sign this waiver.
Okay.
So he did that a lot.
And did you need any permits at all for filming or not? Like when you're in these different countries in any of the places you were, or no? I think there's, you don't, because there's like, for example, there's this, where are you? I think you're in India, right? You went to India. I think it's in India. Yes, it is in India. There's a shot like from up in the air. And I was wondering if that was a drone or if it was just like a tall building. It's like a very quick shot of just kind of like the scenery. It's not even with you in it, but it's really interesting that, I don't know, because to me, like what I really liked about watching that movie and like kind of hearing the background before watching it of like it being a very small crew and it's like with one of your very good friends, is that to me seems kind of like what inspires people in the first place to get into acting. It's like having one of those experiences when you maybe in like high school or college, right? And like I had one of those personally too. I never wanted to be an actor or anything, but I had to do like a school project in college, right? Where just me and my friends and we're messing around with the camera and it's like low budget or like we don't really know what we're doing obviously. But then in your case, it's like a 4-person crew, you get to travel the world. Had you been to any of those countries before? Or was that your first time in all of them? Because I know you said you really like Ireland.
I've been to Italy and I've been to Australia.
Okay, but so Ireland, that was your first time there and you really loved Ireland.
I love Ireland.
Okay. And then I don't know, I kind of want to, can we talk about like what happened? Basically, so like your character is a retired cop, right?
Recently divorced.
Yeah, recently divorced, Michael Busman, right? And you get a call from family essentially, right? Long distance cousin that has gone missing. And so essentially while you're going to all these countries throughout the movie is you're basically like backtracking everything she did. So you're like going along the journey, like she went here, she met these people, right? And then, it just, what I really liked about it, like I said, was like, you're not, I don't know, well, one, I'm thinking throughout the whole movie, like you're gonna find her eventually, right? And then I'm not even, she's just like a young kid wanting to like experience the world, kind of like what I did or like what you did, right? When we're young, and it resonated with me. I was thinking about my travels of like wanting to, I don't know, I like whether it's finding yourself or you're running away from something, right? And then you learn towards the end of the movie, it's like there's this kind of like shady guy in Australia, right? That's like wealthy and like, did he kill her? You're thinking, and then you're thinking maybe she's pregnant and she just doesn't want to be found. And then you find out in the end of the movie she was terminally ill, right? And was like doing that trip as was he drawing from personal experience, or did he, like, because you said it was a passion project for him, what was it, did he tell you his reasoning for like wanting to make the movie, or like what he was trying to kind of portray?
I don't know. I don't remember I knew he had this idea in his head for a number of years, and his buddy Harry was going to play the role because he was going to be a retired Bobby, you know, a retired British cop. And then when Harry couldn't do it, he's like, all right, I'll make him a New York cop. Get Jamie. I don't know what drove Chief to write this script the way it was exactly. I'm not really sure.
Mm-hmm.
A good question I'll have to ask him.
Yeah, because I actually think about from time to time, like, what if I found out I was going to die tomorrow? Like, what would I do, right? And then she finds out she's going to die because she's terminally ill with a brain tumor, I think, right? Something like that. And I mean, that's if you're going to do something, travel the world, right? But yeah, it was just, I don't know, because what I really liked about it throughout it was just all the travel and stuff, and I liked the idea that you're like shooting this thing, and then towards the end it kind of hit me like the message, and like I really related to it in my own personal life. So yeah, I really enjoyed that.
You know, it was interesting. A couple of years back, I reached out to the neurosurgeon who saved my life when I was a little kid, and to the neurologist. And the neurosurgeon, I'm like, I don't know if you remember me, blah blah. He goes, "Oh, I remember you. Just a text." I might have called him at one point. And I asked him to watch Busman's, and I hadn't really thought about it because he's a neurosurgeon, and this at the end of the film winds up being this girl with this neurological issue, and he even asked me in the text, like, how did that storyline come about? I'm like, oh wow, I don't really know, you know.
Did Chief know about your?
Oh yeah.
Do you think that was any inspiration there? Or no?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Because that's an interesting one, actually.
Yeah, because hers was a disease, mine was a fall, an accident, you know.
Okay. So the next movie I wanted to talk about was Mank. So that's another Netflix one, right? Is that your first Netflix movie at that point? Or have you done as far as movies, right?
As far as movies. Bloodline was Netflix, yeah.
TV show though, right? So and I think you said that you play yourself, I think, essentially.
Yeah, I played a version of myself, yeah.
Okay, and then Gary Oldman is, for people that don't know, he plays Mank in the movie. I kind of want to get an idea, because when the podcast I listened to, you said your 4 favorite things you've done essentially were Bloodline, Wednesday, Mank, and Busman's Holiday, right? So I kind of wanted to, I watched Mank and I just skipped through it and saw your scenes, right? But I wanted to kind of watch all 4 of those things to get an idea, right? And Busman's Holiday, it makes sense to me, like we just talked about it, why it was one of your favorite things. So with Mank, what did you really like about that?
Well,
that experience. Gary Oldman, obviously, legend, right?
Well,
and you're in scenes with, I'm watching it, you're you and him just are in scenes together, just you two, right? So is that a little bit of it, meeting
him? A lot of it. I mean, to work, I got to do a very small part in Gone Girl to work with David Fincher, and
that's what it was. Okay.
I love working, period, but Fincher's pretty amazing and magical and unique. So to get another job from Fincher on such, I don't know if iconic is the right word, but it's such a unique piece. It's a black and white film, true story about the writer of Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
And Gary's one of the greatest actors of all time. Just incredible what he does. But he was so funny and so nice and so kind and so, again, it's like when I walked in the restaurant with Sissy and Kyle, and I'm like, I'm on this. I'm like, this is amazing. And I have a good part. I have a really cool, first of all, it's a cool role. Second of all, it's meaty, and I've got all my scenes with Gary. And Fincher's directing. And it's a passion project of David Fincher's that his dad wrote. And it's black and white, it's unique, it's a period piece, it was magic. And I got to be in it.
And so did you know right away with this role when you read it, you were gonna play yourself essentially? Or did you relate to it right away, oh, this is me?
Well, I auditioned for it. And it was interesting because I had auditioned for Lorraine Mayfield years ago when I did Gone Girl. And you audition for someone once and then you don't really see them again. And, in your mind, you're like, oh, I don't know if she remembers me or knows who I am or anything. And then this role in Mank came up. And I went in to audition for Lorraine, and she's like, Jamie, gives me a big hug and a kiss, and because she'd been watching Bloodline and she loved Bloodline. So it's like they know you, and you're like, I don't even think they know who I am or remember me. And you know, she was just so warm and wonderful. Like, tell me all about Bloodline. Tell me this. You know, and we talked for a while, and then it's like, all right, this character is this. So you know, they gave me an idea of what it was, and it wasn't too far of a stretch from me being me. And you know, you find the specifics of the character, and you work on those, and then you just play off Gary.
You did I think it was like a Zoom call where a lot of the cast was interviewed, and you said that one of the actresses, I think, said, I didn't really understand it. I watched it a few times to kind of like understand it. It sounded like what she was saying is like she wasn't sure she was doing the role right. And then you said, you like right after was like, I kind of felt that way too. Like, is this how I should be doing it? Does that trigger anything? Do you remember that?
I remember a little because some of the actors had a more period vocal style.
Yeah, like a Hollywood style kind of you were saying. And then like you were sure, like, am I doing the right thing? So.
Yeah, and I was just sort of speaking like I do now, and I didn't know, am I too contemporary? Am I not doing the whatever? But Fincher seemed okay with it, and Gary seemed okay with it, so I thought, I guess I'm okay with it, you know?
And are you thinking that throughout the movie while you're shooting, or is that kind of something you thought afterwards? Like,
I think it occurred while we were shooting.
While you're shooting, okay.
But then I'd already been in the can, you know, like, you know, I'm already filmed. And David liked what I assume he liked what I did, or at least tolerated it. But
and with Gary Oldman, did you learn anything? Is there something like with an actor like that? Is stuff you take away, whether it's like work ethic or some kind of trick, like with how he approaches acting or like how he is on a set?
It was just reassuring more than anything. Like he, you know, David Fincher is notorious for doing so many takes. I mean, an incredible amount of takes. And Gary's in, you know, every scene in the movie almost. And Gary, you know, we did a scene one time, and he's, you know, got a smoke, and we did like 27 takes in a row. And finally he laid down, he's like, I've done 27 takes in a row smoking a cigarette, you know, like, it's just really funny. And I just loved the whole experience. And I just, you know, I can look back at my career and be like, I got to do that, you know, like Bloodline and Wednesday and Busman's and even Sons and other shows, you know. But yeah, Gary's just so kind. What I really took away from Gary was he seemed to be clueless that he was a movie star. I'm sure that's not true, but he was just so, you know, the way you want people to be, the way I try to be is your crew, but your background, you're the lead, you're treated all the same, you know, and it was just such a wonderful gig.
Okay, so then after Mank, you did I guess it's SEAL Team. Were you doing SEAL Team while you were shooting Mank, or was that there's like in between? Because SEAL Team, at least as far as like when it came out, was 2019 to 2021. Mank was 2020 when it released.
I think I started. We did The Passage in 18. I was on hold through 19. I bought the house in 19. Didn't get The Passage. Then got on SEAL Team.
Okay. So
my buddy, I have a very good friend named Sean Haddisy, who's a great actor, great director, and we play a boatload of tennis together. And he happened to bump into Chris Chulak, who had done Southland, and Sean was a lead in Southland. And he bumped into Chris Chulak and said, hey, you know, Jamie's show didn't get picked up. Next thing I know, 2 days later, I get a call for SEAL Team.
Wow.
So that was amazing. So I shot SEAL Team and then got Mank and then continued to shoot SEAL Team whenever the season picked up or whatever. Maybe I was clean shaven for both, so I could do both jobs, yeah.
And so, like you said, you bought the house and you didn't get the role. And then you have Mank and then obviously the SEAL Team. Are you like, at least financially, are you worried financially, or you're not even thinking at this point about money really, and it's more about just...
No,
like,
I'm thinking about money. Yeah.
That's always a thing.
That's always a thing. I mean, until I get, you know, if I ever get loaded and, you know, but I've got, I mean, I have my boys are 19 and 17. They,
Okay.
you know, went to a private high school
Yeah.
for different reasons, and there's tuition for that
In LA too.
in
Expensive
LA.
place to
And
live.
then I've got colleges to pay for, and then my girlfriend, partner, Heather, you know, she doesn't make a lot of money, and I try to help her and, you know, help with her kids when necessary.
Mhm.
And, you know, gotta take care of my ex-wife too a bit. So there's, you know, money's a thing.
So Animal Kingdom, you were on 4 episodes of that. That was in 2021.
That's because of Sean Hannity. He was the lead in that. And that was that was the first gig I got after COVID.
Okay.
So we shot that in, well, I think we started August of 2020.
Sean's Pope, right?
Yeah, Sean's Pope.
Sean's Pope, yeah.
And he said, there's a role, I'll get you an audition for it. And I went on tape and I booked it, and Sean directed me in one episode. And yeah, that was all because of Sean. As was SEAL Team, in my opinion.
So in a couple.
And just to add to that,
Uh-huh.
you know, nowadays most auditions you put on tape.
Okay.
You know, you have to either go to a place and pay for it. And Sean Hannity does almost all my auditions. He's been so
Really?
kind. I booked Wednesday from him.
Really? Wow.
I booked this job I'm gonna do coming up. A lot of stuff because of Sean Hannity. He's great at filming. He's a great director, and he's just a very dear human.
See, I found that so funny because I watched Animal Kingdom, like when it came out, I watched it, right? And he's like, his character is so unlikable, but it sounds like he's like a really good guy in real
He's a
life.
great guy.
And it's funny, like the juxtaposition, right? Or the polarity of like, you
Yeah.
can be this like really unlikable guy, like troubled guy. Yeah, he's so good in it. And then like
Yeah.
hearing about it in real life. So,
Yeah,
okay, so
nice.
one of the things you said in another interview was, I think you were kind of talking about like, how you should be on a set, right? As an actor, like you want to be kind, you want to be genuine, and I think you used him as an example. Like when you were on the set of Animal Kingdom, all the crew members would talk about how they love Sean a lot. So can you I'm kind of curious about that. Like, is that make it like if you're like is that a really important part in, like, for example, in sports, right? You can be like, there's like the stereotypical, like the guy doesn't show up for practice. He's like kind of like aloof by himself, but he's amazing. And at the professional level, it doesn't matter. They're gonna like, or he'll have different demands and it'll be written in his contract, right? But they still like, he's amazing. So they like sign the guy and he plays and whatever, right? But maybe the team doesn't necessarily like him. So is there something similar to that where it's like, if you're on a set and you're an actor, if you're really easy to work with and likable and the crew loves you, does that make it easier to get jobs? And then if you're one of the legendary actors or actresses, but you're kind of like difficult, then obviously they're going to put up with you. Is it similar like that with how sports is?
I would guess so. I mean, you'd have to ask the people who do the hiring.
Uh-huh.
I will say, one of the head producers on Bloodline, this guy Mark Baker, who's a dear man, wonderful person. He's worked on a ton of stuff as a showrunner and producer, whatever, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Everyone on Bloodline was so kind and wonderful. And I said, do you like research? Like, do you go talk to directors who have worked? And he goes, no. You talk to the ADs and the PAs.
Mm-hmm.
Because the directors will get, you're going to be nice to the director.
Yeah.
But you talk to the people who take care of the trailers.
Yeah, but you don't need to
Do
necessarily
they
be
show
nice
up on
to-
time?
Yeah.
Do they?
Mhm.
He goes, that's who you talk to. I thought that was brilliant.
Mhm. Yeah, that is interesting.
So I just, I got onto the set on Animal Kingdom, and one of the crew was like, "Oh, you know Sean?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, we played tennis together." And the person just goes, "We love him. We love him." And I think because there are shows, and I believe on Animal Kingdom, where there were other actors, actresses, or whatever, who had been a lot more difficult.
And that's what I thought was interesting, because once again, his character, right, that he's playing like this really difficult, like not likable guy, and he's the most liked
Mhm.
guy on the set, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he's funny. He's funny.
that's cool. And then so the Lincoln Lawyer was 2022. That's another Netflix one. That I actually watched a couple of episodes with that. So at that one, another audition or no? Do you remember? Or you knew someone for that?
I don't remember if well, they knew me because it's the Bosch people.
Okay.
You know, it's Michael Connolly again. I think
Okay.
it might have been the same no, Wendy O'Brien cast that. No, Wendy had cast Sons of Anarchy, and I think they just offered me that role. I don't really remember. But it was really cool because at the same time, like I did with the Biggie Small, Unsolved and Bosch, while I was filming Lincoln Lawyer, I also was filming at the same time CSI Vegas. So it was great. I had 2 jobs at once, both in town. You know, it was amazing. And then I booked, thanks to Sean, I booked Wednesday. So as I was filming, finishing up on CSI and Lincoln Lawyer, I knew I was going to go film Wednesday. So that was amazing.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about Wednesday. So I think, was this another one where it was kind of like you again? Like you as a person, right? I think
It's
you
me,
said,
but a bit grumpier.
That's what you said, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so tell us the story about that, because you said you didn't hear, like you did the audition, I think, but you didn't hear about it for months. Right?
Yeah,
So,
so
like,
I had,
talk about that a little bit.
There was like 13 auditions I had done over the course of a month or whatever, 2 months or I don't know. But Sean did almost all of them for me. And I was really close on a couple, some big roles. And when I auditioned for Wednesday, like I went to Sean and I'm like, I don't know what really to do with this. Because you play a character, and I'm like, I'm just kind of doing it. And he goes, okay. So I did it, and I'm like, anything different? He goes, no, I think it's great. So I'm like, okay. And I found out later, so that was like the end of February I auditioned. And then like April comes along, and it's like, hey, you know that Tim Burton thing you auditioned for? You're like really in the running for this. And then, June comes along. You know that Tim Burton thing? You're like really in the running for this. And July comes along. You're pretty much going to be the choice for this. And then late July, they're like, all right, you booked it. You're going to Romania in a month and a half, whatever.
Wow.
And you're like, oh my God. So it's first of all, it's like, oh my God, I have a job. This is awesome. 2, it's a series regular, it pays well. 3, it's Tim Burton. 4, I gotta go to Romania? Holy mackerel, like, that's crazy. For a long time.
It was all shot there in Romania?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I found out later the Al and Miles, the show creators, and wonderful, wonderful guys. But they told me later that Tim didn't have any other choice. You were Tim's only choice for the role of me. And I thought that was pretty cool.
And then, so there was something like that with, I don't know if you talked to Tim himself or someone else.
Tim called me.
Yeah, and you talked to him, you said, and then he like was saying he was kind of afraid of you, or like, why didn't you?
Yeah, he
like,
said,
why, you're like,
I was
you
on
played
the
a cop and I'm afraid of it, right?
Yeah, I was on the phone, and Tim grew up in Burbank, which was funny.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and he goes, hey, Jamie, it's Tim Burton. I'm like, hi, like they told me he was gonna call, and Tim doesn't talk for very long. He's not cold at all. He's wonderful. But if you get him on the phone, it's just like, hey, okay, bye. Like, he's got stuff to do. But wonderful, really sweet. But he goes, hey, Jamie, I loved your audition. He goes, yeah, I've always been scared of cops, and I was scared of you. It was like something like that. And I'm like, okay. And then I was going to ask him questions. He goes, yeah, we'll talk about that when I see you. Okay, great. Glad you're on board, And then I got there and I met him, and we had a long, conversation, and he's wonderful. Yeah. And
is that, so like talking about kind of like maybe fame and being recognized, is that like, did that kind of put you to another level as far as, because like Wednesday was a very like popular show, right? And I would imagine like the demographic as far as who's watching it, it's probably adults, but it's also like a lot of like teens and stuff like that. So are you like do you get like recognized more, or like you get less?
When Wednesday first came out, yes.
Okay.
A bit more. The funniest story, it was so cute. I was over at Vaughn's, the grocery store right here.
Yep.
And it was New Year's Eve. And going there, picking whatever up, and I'm walking down the aisle, and there's this teenage, 13-year-old girl, whatever, with her dad, and they're talking, and she looks at me and she goes, And I kind of smile at her, and I'm realizing what's happening, and so I go down to get whatever, and then she comes walking by me like she's on her phone, and I'm like, okay, she must recognize me from Wednesday, and then this other kid comes along, this guy a couple years older than she, and he's walking down, and he's like, and then I'm going back down the aisle towards the front of the store, and the girl's talking to her parents, and she's like at the edge of the aisle, and she looks and she sees me coming, and she like sort of ducks out, and then she looks again. I go, did you watch Wednesday? She's like, yes, yes. I go, hi, I'm the sheriff. She goes, I know, and I'm like, do you want to get a picture? She's like, oh my God. I go, is it all right with your parents? Can we get in? Like the brother's like, can I get in? And it was so sweet because they were just visiting from Canada.
Really? Oh, wow.
And they were staying like at Universal, and they just happened to go to Vaughn's, and
wow,
that's a neat feeling.
That
like
is,
you get to
very cool.
make someone's day because you're on something, you know.
What was that experience like? Was that also like another level because it was such a? Well, I mean, I'm imagining before filming the expectation is this is going to be like a really big show, right?
No,
so
we didn't know.
You didn't know.
We didn't know. We knew it was Tim.
You
know, Tim's Tim. He's amazing. And when we were filming, the sets were amazing. The costumes. Jenna was amazing. Jenna Ortega. I mean, everyone in that show. I mean, Hunter, Ricky, Gwendolyn. There was all magic to it. But Jenna, that poor girl. They worked her. She worked so hard. I've never seen anyone work so hard. On days she wasn't working, she had to be training for fighting or swords or cello and she never said boo about it,
Yeah, I was skipping through it yesterday, once again, just looking at your scenes and everything, and I'm actually gonna go back and watch that. It honestly looks amazing.
They did a great
It looks
job.
so good. Like you said, the costumes and everything, like the sets, it's on it, like the color grading, like everything looks amazing. Honestly, I was really surprised actually. So yeah, I'm gonna watch that one. So I just want to go over one more thing you've been in, and then I have a couple like just random questions. But so then I think the last thing you did as far as shows was 1923, and that's is that the spinoff of Yellowstone, right?
Yeah,
no, right?
It's a prequel.
The prequel of it, yeah, that's right. How did that come about?
I auditioned for that.
That one you auditioned for, okay.
Yeah, I think I auditioned one time with Sean, and then I had to read for another role, and he was busy, and I booked it from tape, yeah. And that casting director, John Capsadera, I owe a lot to. He also cast Wednesday.
Okay.
So John's been very good to me.
That one's Paramount, right? Or
yeah,
no?
yeah.
And so is that similar to Netflix as far as I mean, maybe you didn't kind of get an idea because it was 3 episodes, but did you feel free with that? Like, is there a difference, I guess, for like a traditional studio versus like a Netflix or a streaming service as far as like the freedom they give you, or do you think that just applies to Netflix?
I don't know.
Like, has that been with Netflix? That's been the case usually, where you kind of feel free and that like kind of like
Well, I don't totally notice. Maybe I hear about it more. I don't notice it myself as an actor.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
But I just felt like on Bloodline, they were very free. Also, you're way down the keys. Like you're not, it's like the studio can't come checking on you that easily. I do think there have been some other shows. One in particular I know of. I'm not going to say, but where the not necessarily the network, but the producing studio was really on it, like really on it, making it very difficult for the director, the creators of the show, etc. So that I was aware of. 23 was amazing because first of all, it's a period piece. It's so much fun to shoot, but you go up and you train at cowboy camp, so you go up and you're riding every day. And the other actors whom I was with, we all got very friendly, and we're all just, we're riding horses in Montana. It was like, 70 degrees out, it's beautiful out, and you're like, this is my job. This is pretty cool, And that was just an amazing shoot, and I'm supposed to go back to do a few episodes of that, and hopefully it works out.
Okay, so getting into kind of just overall what you've done with your acting, it seems like it's a lot of like sheriffs, cops, stuff like cowboys, stuff like that, right? Is that something you're drawn to, or is that something that you kind of do because you've done a lot of it? You usually go for roles like that, or like you actually like that? Is that what?
No, I love it all.
Love
I mean, I just love to work. I think for some reason I started getting cast as cops, maybe just my look and whatever, early on, and then Southland. All the extras, all the background actors in Southland were real cops, all of them. Even if they were plainclothes homicide detectives walking through a court scene, they were real. So it was amazing to get to be that involved with real cops, and especially in the squad room, except for the main actors, they're all real cops in their uniforms they brought, and you get to listen to their stories and pick up on a lot of stuff. So I think the one thing that really got my career going, yes, playing cops, but I could, for some reason, I could play very damaged guys and bring a certain level of believability to their pain. So whether that was crying or, like my kid was killed or I killed someone, I was able to bring that damaged individual to life, and that's where I got a lot of guest stars as that, like on that show I told you, Blind Justice, where the director wound up directing Sons of Anarchy. Like it was a heavy role, and this guy had been holding guilt for years because he killed someone in friendly fire that he never admitted to, and then he, that kind of guilt, from an Iraq war or whatever. Those were characters I've been able to bring to life, I think.
That's interesting you said that, because when I was watching your stuff, like for me, for example, nothing about like your performance or anything, but it just seems like it doesn't fit you maybe as well, or like there's only so much you can do with it. Whereas when I watch like Bloodline, for example, like right away I'm like, he's amazing in this. Like this is so perfect, right? Or like in what was the other one I watched? Oh, in The Passage too. Like right away I'm like, this, like it fits him so well. Like it's almost like, it's interesting because I think maybe you can tell me about this. Like, is there some roles where it's like you can bring so much more, and others like there's only so much you can do, whether that's just because the way it's written and there's not enough lines, or like you just have to play it a certain way, right? Like maybe your strengths are some other type of role, but in this role you're currently in, like you have to do it this certain way, and you can't play to your strengths.
Yeah, I mean you try to bring your strengths in. There's some things you feel you're better at or whatever. Like SEAL Team, I love working on SEAL Team. They were very nice. It was a wonderful role, but you're a Navy SEAL officer. That's it. You're not going to show emotion. You're running a tight ship. That's it. Boom. Maybe you get an argument. Like I had a great argument scene with David Boreanaz, and he really let loose in it, and that was great just to work off of that. I do in Mank, I did have that really heavy scene with Gary where I tell him I had Parkinson's, and I was very proud of how that came out. To get to work with Gary in such an intimate scene. And Gary one time, it almost made me cry, but we were doing reshoots on Mank, and he walks up behind me, he goes, my character's name is Shelley, he goes, Shelley? I go, yeah. He goes, you're fabulous in this film. I go, really? He goes, oh yeah, fabulous. And then he walked away, and I'm like, whoa, Gary Oldman just told me I'm doing all right.
Amazing. So you had another experience similar to that. I actually want to bring that up now that where did I put it? Holly Hunter.
Oh my God, she was so sweet.
So yeah, didn't you had a scene with her? I think, right? And she gave you I think one of your favorite compliments you've ever gotten there. So can you talk a little about that?
So I had this scene with Holly in Saving Grace, which was her show. I did one episode, and it was a really heavy scene. I was crying or whatever, I don't remember, but it was very heavy. And you try to bring that when the camera's on you as best you can, and I've always felt that I try to bring it just as much when the camera's not on me. And it's just, I don't know, it's the way I think it should be, if you can. Sometimes you're all washed out and you already cried it out. So we were shooting, you know, they shot all my close-ups and all that, and they turned around and they're shooting on Holly, and in between scenes, she was very focused, and you know, it's her show, and very kind. And I would say, Holly, do you need anything different? And she'd just go, and she wouldn't say anything much. And then we got done filming, and I was just giving all I could to her, and I'm, you know, back of my head, you see my ear or whatever. And it's Holly Hunter. And then they're like, all right, cut, we're, you know, done with the scene. She goes, wait a minute, hold on. Are we done with the scene? We're done. No more takes? She goes, okay. She grabs my hand. She is Holly Hunter holding my hand like this close to me. She goes, you are one of the most generous actors I've ever worked with. Thank you so much. And you're like, it's like when Gary said that, and you're like, holy shit. Like, Academy Award winner, amazing actress, and sweetheart that I'm a huge fan of just said this to me. And that was really,
that's gotta be the highlight probably, right, in acting, like hearing something like that. Like I think for me personally, if I was an actor and like hearing something like that, or like from Gary Oldman, would be more than like an award even, I think.
I haven't gotten an award yet, so I don't know.
I feel like, I don't know, because it seems especially these days, the awards, it's like kind of political and like whatever, right? But it's like to be recognized, right, by your craft, by someone that's at such a high level.
Especially when it's that intimate.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Holly's sitting, she grabbed my hand and is holding my hand. I mean, Gary just comes up to me and, you know, it just tells me that. I mean, it's Gary Oldman, it's Holly Hunter. You know, I mean, it's like Gretzky saying, dude, you're really good, you know?
Yeah, that's so cool. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about networking. Would you say you're a good networker? Like, are you kind of like on your own as far as like, do you keep to yourself, or are you good about networking with people? You're not good at it? Okay.
I'm good at tennis, pretty good.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple people whom I'll play tennis with, and I have, you know, gotten some work out of that. But when I play tennis, That's it. Like if I can beat the person, I'm beating the person. I'm not gonna let them win, you know. And I think that's respected. But I don't go out, Heather and I really kind of keep to ourselves. I'm with my kids whenever, you know, I don't have any social media, and I don't want it, I never have. So I don't really network that way.
So there was one story you told with Sunny Days, where you're like right here in Toluca Lake, I think, right? And you're walking by, or you're on your bike, stop to check your phone, and like Mike O'Shea.
Oh my God,
there,
O'Shea was there. Yeah.
So like that to me is like did you just hey, what's up guys, or did you say was that considered networking, or you just happened, they saw you and then they called?
No, that was just a coincidence. So Mike O'Shea was the camera operator on Bloodline. Great guy, amazing, fantastic guy and filmmaker. And I had finished Bloodline, and I was riding my bike in Toluca Lake, and I literally stopped to go in the shade to check my phone, and I look, and there's Mike O'Shea, who lives in Jersey. He doesn't live here. And he's with Jason, I forget the last name, with a W. Anyway.
Wiles,
Jason Wiles. And another guy, Michael Rooker, the actor Michael Rooker. And I look over, and O'Shea catches my eye. He goes, what the hell? So I go over and I talk to them, and Jason's like, I'm looking at Jason and I go, oh, I know who you are. You're a really good actor. He goes, I know you are. You're a lot better. And it was so sweet that he said that, you know?
Yeah.
And then Michael Rooker was there, whom I'd met years ago. And we just shoot the shit for a while. And I love O'Shea. He's a great guy. And we worked 3 seasons on Bloodline. And they're telling me they're doing this film. I'm like, well, if you need anyone, I'm around. I'm local. And just like that. And Jason's like, we might, because Michael Rooker was supposed to do the role I did, and wound up he couldn't do it.
Oh, okay.
So then O'Shea and Jason called me, and they're like, you want to do this role? I'm like, yeah. It was great. So that was just coincidence.
But okay, so it seems though like reputation then is kind of what's gotten you a lot of stuff rather than like networking. Would you say that?
I I think I'm, you know, like in baseball, we call it utility player, like dependable. I think I've been that. I've been a very dependable actor. I have had some shows where I've gotten called last second because someone dropped out, and it's worked out well for me. Then occasionally I get roles where I can bring a little something, you know, I hope magical to it, you know, or, yeah.
Okay. I want to talk about too, because you mentioned it earlier, with you kind of like, you have the mentality of an athlete or like from playing sports your whole life, and you kind of like take that into acting, right? So in team sports especially, it might not be the most talented team, but they have great chemistry, and that kind of carries them, and like that's how they win a championship, right? It's not always the most talented, it's like who has the best chemistry, and like the most talented team might have terrible chemistry, and like they might not play for each other and like really like each other, and then they don't reach their potential. Does that exist on a set where it's like the dynamic of like, whether it's like the production crew, the assistant producers, like all those people, like it's just a good environment, and like that kind of brings the whole project to a new level? Have you experienced that at all, or is that?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of projects. I mean, I keep harking back to Bloodline because it's just such a magical time, but everyone was there. You know, the thing I love about acting, there's many things, but it's like a team sport, okay? We're all there, the caterer, the PAs, the director, the actors, wardrobe, everyone. You're all there to play this game and to make it the best game you can possibly make, to make the finished product the best you can. And you're all in it together. And that I find is the magic of movie making, TV making, whatever. Yeah.
Going back to the roles you play, so I actually want to talk about this. So like you mentioned too, your motivations growing up was, it seemed like a lot like Gene Hackman, Steve McQueen, Alan Alda, Clint Eastwood, right? These actors, like it seems like that's like basically the roles you play essentially, right? So do you think you were like, with those influences growing up, is that kind of, it seems like you're doing what you want to do as far as the roles you're getting, right? Or was that was that conscious, I guess, when you started acting? It wasn't conscious when you started acting, it just you kind of fell into it.
I mean, as a kid, I would watch, I don't know, you don't remember F Troop, but Addams Family, Munsters, you know.
Yeah.
And I was always more drawn, I Dream of Jeannie, I was drawn to not the lead character as much, but the second guy, Agar on F Troop was this guy. And I just, I don't know, I was always drawn to that. And then I started watching movies and learned about Gene Hackman, and just thought, there was a great article in the New York Times when I was starting acting about Hackman, and it said, the uncommon common man. And that stuck with me, and I said, that's what I want to be. I want to be, you know, a lot has to do with my look too. It's, you know, if you look like Brad Pitt, you look like Brad Pitt, and you're gonna get those roles, you know. But I look like this, and I like the idea, like Hackman, where it's just like the common guy, but it's not common. There's something. There's a great movie Hackman did with Matt. What the heck's his name? I'll come up with a minute. Very famous actor from. I'll forget. But he was when he was a kid.
It's not Matt Dillon, is it?
Yeah, Matt Dillon.
It is Matt Dillon.
Target. And it was a great movie where Hackman is like this. He owns a hardware store, and he's Matt Dillon's dad, and Matt's like, yeah, my dad is, you know. And then the story evolves, and you find out that Hackman's character was a CIA operative. And that was his past life. And his son starts learning all this stuff about his dad and the dad's capabilities of what he can do. And I always found that to be fascinating. Bit of a segue here, but when I was growing up, there was a man across the street, and he was just in khakis and a t-shirt, and we had just moved into this house, and the man was like tending to the garden or whatever, and my dad said, do you know who that man is? And I'm like, I don't know, is he, you know, he's working on the garden? He goes, no, that's the owner of the house, that's Mr. Zust. Mr. Zust is a multimillionaire or whatever he was, you know, at the time, and he goes, but look at him. He's just dressed in khakis and a shirt and, you know, t-shirt. And it always struck me like, you know, that sort of very understated,
Subtle.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I wanted to bring to my career, my roles.
That makes sense. Yeah, you said your dream role, you said, was to play Hackman's son.
Yeah.
So is that kind of what we just talked about with Hackman? That's the motivation behind wanting that? Because he's.
I mean, I would love to. I mean, he's 93
Yeah.
now, but he hasn't been acting.
But so why his son though? Why not like I don't know, whatever other role you could be in it? Why the?
Because I look enough like him, and I'm age appropriate, and I just thought I'd love to play that guy's son.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I can't. The movie. I haven't seen a lot of Gene Hackman movies, but with Will Smith, I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember the one you mean.
I would watch that all the time as a kid because it would always be on TV, and I would watch it. Incredible movie. But that's kind of like you were talking about. Like he's very subtle in that. It's not like he's not flamboyant. He's just very measured, and it's like he's amazing in it.
Yeah.
Let me see what it's called. We need to. Enemy of the State.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Did you ever see Hoosiers?
No, I haven't seen.
Oh my God, kid, you gotta see Hoosiers.
You gotta watch Hoosiers.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll put it on the list.
French Connection, you gotta watch both of those.
I'm writing it down. French Connection. So what has changed then with
Mississippi Burning?
Mississippi Burning?
Yeah, with Willem Dafoe and Gene Hackman's phenomenal movie. Phenomenal.
Okay.
One of my favorites.
So what's changed in the industry since you started, as far as, because like you said, you're not really into social media, right? But I'd imagine that plays a much bigger role now. Is that really what it is? Is just like social media is
streaming.
Like,
I mean, streaming services.
Streaming.
So, you know, television started as you had 3 networks.
Yeah.
And you had, if you got a job, you know, if you got a show, you're shooting 22 episodes, you're getting 22 paychecks at series regular money. And then you would get really good residuals. And then once it went into syndication, then you get a lot of money. You know, once it was 100 episodes or whatever.
Yeah.
Cable changed that, and the pay was different. And my career didn't really hit in that way till Bloodline, and that's when streaming was coming out. Streaming has changed everything. You know, the way we watch TV. It also brought in movie. You know, it used to be you were a TV actor or a movie actor way back. You know, Hackman didn't do TV.
Yeah.
And then, you know, with the advent of Netflix and, you know, Sissy doing Bloodline and other actors doing things, it really became, I think the storytellers are now in television because you can tell your story in 10 hours rather than narrowing it down to 2 hours, you know what I mean? And then the big directors have come to TV as well. So I think that's changed a lot where, you know, TV is film is TV, it's all the same thing now. I mean, to get a movie made is so hard, it's gotta be like a blockbuster. How we watch movies and TV are totally different. This whole strike has been about making amends and getting contracts that resemble where the industry has gone and the fear of AI and all that. That's really scary.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say those have been the main changes, you know.
Do you think does social media, like if you have a big social media following, but maybe you're not as experienced as an actor, is that getting you in the door in acting? Like, do you think?
I think for younger people, because you're starting off anyway, you're young. I mean, unless you're like Jenna Ortega, who started acting as a little kid and grew up in the industry and, you know, has developed that. But I think if you have all these followers, or you're a influencer or something like that.
Influencer.
You know, I'm sure that can help you, but then you got to deliver.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You gotta be good, or you just have to have that charisma that people want to watch you. But, you know, there are young, fantastic actors out there. Look at Jenna. Look at all the kids on Wednesday.
So what would your advice be then? Let's say someone's like a 18-year-old, 22-year-old kind of maybe like you, what's your advice then for like getting into acting? Is social media, do you think that's an important part, whether that's
I
like
have
a
no idea
YouTube,
about
you
social media.
don't know anything?
I have no idea, no interest, so I can't help you there. Just try to work as much as you can, whatever that is, whether you're doing plays, student films, you try to get your psych card, do extra work, do commercial, anything you can that gets you on a set, so you know what it's like to be on a set. And don't be arrogant, and be kind, and really, show up on time and know your lines. And hopefully you don't screw up like I did on 24.
So be professional.
Yeah, just be kind.
Do you feel like you've made it?
I do.
You do feel like
I
you've
mean,
made it?
to an extent.
When did you feel that way? When would you say? And how old are you, by the way, if you don't mind me asking now?
57.
You're 57,
Yeah.
okay. So when did you feel you made it, do you think?
There's been different things, like when I got cast in NYPD Blue from a casting workshop, Scott Jenkins cast me. I was, that was a huge show at the time. Dennis Franz, Kim Delaney, and I was like, wow, I'm in this. I got scenes. I got dialogue. I got a character. That was one. And then 24, certainly Sons of Anarchy, all those. Bloodline was like going from the minors to the all-star team.
Okay.
And it was like, if you're saying hockey, it was like going from the minors, you're on the all-star team and you're third line, but they're like, yeah, but you're gonna play a lot, you're gonna skate. You're not on the first two lines, you're not a star, but you're playing, kid. Bloodline was that for me. That was such a magical thing. And then literally every job I get, Mank, 23, SEAL to anything, just I get to set. I still am. It's still like I'm a kid in a candy store when I show up at a lot and they've got my name on a list. If the guard lets me in, I'm still like, holy shit, I'm invited in. It's still that cool for me. And in that way, and then when you walk onto a set or a soundstage or locations and you're like, whoa, look at what they built, look at what they've done, and I'm in it. I'm a character in this scene. Like all this that they created, it's incredible. I mean, especially when it's such unique things like Mank, Wednesday, the architecture, the stuff, we're working for Tim. 1923, where it's a period piece. It's just, to me, it's just such magic. And, I'm not a happy-go-lucky person. I wish I was more, but I'm very grateful. And there's not a moment, I mean, I get stressed out like crazy, but there's not a moment that I don't appreciate where I'm at career-wise and knowing what it took to get here and knowing the likelihood of that happening if you, like my dad said, you percentage-wise or whatever, you beat the odds.
Yeah, that was something on the other podcast I listened to with you. I think one of I don't know if it was the subject or the YouTube title, but it was like 25 years to get a series regular, essentially. So like,
that's exactly right.
Do you think it's just your love for it and passion for it that kept you going, or like what? Or did you feel like that 25-year-old period? Did you feel like, I mean, were you thinking like, were you having really hard times, or did you? Because it also seemed like you were working during that 25-year period, even if it wasn't like big roles or recurring roles or anything. But you always seemed like every year I was looking, it seemed like you were doing a few things, right?
Yeah.
So is that just it kept you going, and then like maybe like someone tells you like you did really good? Or like a kid, like you said with the Thor, like getting noticed like that kind of stuff. It's what keeps you going, and then your love for it, or what?
Yeah,
what makes you do it for 25 years, right? And then
I love what I do. I love what I do, and I realize how fortunate I am to get to do it. And it's like I said to someone the other day, like I haven't worked a job. I haven't worked. I'm 57. I haven't worked in 25 years, whatever, however long it's been, I've been making a living as an actor. So maybe 2002 or whatever that is. So 21 years. I haven't worked. I love what I do. It's like, I love what I get to do, and I'm so fortunate that I get to do it. I've had great representation once I got representation. That's been amazing for me. I have, when I got with Kim Dore, she was an amazing agent, really understood me, went to bat for me. Like I said, I'd still be with her, but she left the business years ago. She's a minister.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then Devin Jackson, my manager, took me on, I don't know, 10 years ago, whatever it was, right before I got Bloodline. He got me that. And that just changed my world. And then once Kim left the business, Bloodline had come out. So, you know, bigger level agencies were interested. And I have this agent, Chris Schmidt at Paradigm. And I have a really good team. And they're very kind, and they're very good people, and they're really good at what they do work-wise, and good humans. So I've been very fortunate in that respect.
Do you ever think about, I mean, this is kind of dumb, because it's like, it's a what if question, but like, are you glad with hockey it didn't work out? Or do you ever think about that? Like if, because you love what you do, right? So it's like, but it seems like you kind of discovered it later that you loved it so much, right?
Acting?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I gave up on the idea, and I'd never done it as a kid. You know?
Yeah, but think if you stayed with the hockey, you might not, right? Like
maybe, or maybe, you know, you don't know. You could,
yeah, but like hockey was your love at the time.
Yeah.
And you had to get over that, right? And you thought about acting, but you didn't love it, and then you discover like your love for it, and that seems to what's kept you going.
I think so. It was always my dream, though. It was always my dream to be an actor, you know, play hockey and be an actor.
Be an actor.
And that was the dream. And then I guess once, you know, 50% of that got taken away, the hockey, and all the trauma, there was a lot of trauma for me, with both physically and emotionally. It was so, that's why I can play the damaged guys whom I play. A lot of that has to do with what I went through after I got hurt, you know.
Makes sense.
And family stuff. So.
What is the advice for someone as far as like the actual process of acting, like how you go about a role maybe, or like how, like, do you have any advice for someone in terms of that? Like prepping for a role, or like
I would say find your own believability of what you do, and you got to be really honest with yourself. Like, do I believe what I'm saying right now, or do I sound like I'm not real or whatever? And really work on it, and then find this, whatever the magic is within you, whatever that is. For me, it was through athletics that I can draw upon to get better at what I'm doing. And then I draw on people, certainly my brothers and my dad. I played a role recently where I literally just kind of played my dad. And then I really observe people, you know, at different times. I'll really observe people on the street or whatever. And you kind of take it all in, and you put it in your memory bank, and, oh yeah, well, that one, you walk like this, you know.
I don't know how to really ask this, but so like when you're in a role and you're a character, when you're in the moment, are you or are you the other character? Are you the character? Is like the way even you're thinking in your head, like the voice in your head, is that like the voice of the character, or is you like, oh, I need to do it like this way, and like I should, like, here is where I do, like, do you really fully embody the character, or are you sometimes okay? Where it's like you're a different person almost when you're in it. When it's almost like you're a different person when you're in it, like
when
that.
You're in the zone.
Yeah.
When you're really in the zone, you know, it's like when you play a sport. When you're in the zone, you're in the zone. And I think there's times where acting is your art, but then there's the craft when the art's not doing it, or it's take 37 and you gotta repeat the same thing, and, you know, make sure that you do this on the same line, and then you do this on the same line, you know, like you're you know, there's a lot of technicality to acting too. Yeah, it's there are times where you're very into, especially if the voice is different. Like when I was doing Sons of Anarchy and I was really working on the Irish accent, and I would come home and I remember like someone said something to me and like, "Are you gonna go do whatever?" I go, "I." And she goes, "Did you just say I?" I go, "Yeah, I guess I did. Yeah." Like,
Yeah.
you know, you're kind of focusing on it so much, you know.
I'm glad you mentioned the zone because I actually wanted to ask you that because of like playing sports, right? So like to me, the zone when I play baseball, it's like when you have absolutely no doubt in your ability and like it's almost like your brain's turned off. Like the voice in your head's not even turned on. Like it's not like you're up the bat and you're not even thinking about anything and it's like everything slows down almost and like the ball seems slower, right? And it's like you're just naturally doing everything you've trained for so long to do and there's no like talking about the yips, right? It's almost like with the yips too, at least in baseball, probably in tennis too, it's like you're trying to force it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to force the swing. And so with being in the zone and acting, is that just like there's no doubt and it's just there's nothing going on in your head and you're just like embodying the character? Is that what that is also?
Yeah,
is what
it is, but it's also the technicalities of, you know, you have to hit this mark and repeat this action or
and you're not thinking about that though, you're just doing it, or are you thinking, okay, I have to like go here now and like
when you're really in the zone,
you're not
thinking about it. But it's hard sometimes to get in the zone. It depends on the character. It depends on what are the elements. I mean, I'm pretty easy on a set, but I sometimes I get very focused, and then if someone like there was a time shooting on Wednesday where there was a crew guy just sitting there, and you know they were all Romanian, and some of them didn't even really speak English, and he's on his phone, you know, doing stuff on the phone, and I'm having this serious scene with my son, and he's right where that window is in my eye line, and I'm like, excuse me, can someone have him not on his phone, or could he go somewhere else? And I'm in the zone, I'm getting in the zone for the character, and it's a heavy scene, and my character is kind of pissed off. And I think I came off a little pissed off at the guy. And I didn't mean to. But it was just, and then I hate, you know, once a camera rolls, once they say, all right, speed, roll, once they say that, shut up. Like, people tend to talk and because as an actor, you're locked in and you've got your lines and you da 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 da. And it's really the only, you know, every crew person has their job and everything's important, all of that, all right, equal to the acting. It's all very important, but it's all real. It's all tactical. You're putting this mic here. You're putting a mic on me. You're fixing whatever, makeup, hair, whatever, clothing. That's all real. But we as the actor, we're playing a fake person with fake lines, with clothing that's not ours, with props that we don't normally have on us. And we have to make it all seem like it is real. It is that. And that's when you get focused and you get in the zone and you have to block out that the camera's right here and someone's holding a boom right here and you know someone's holding a flag here and there's lighting and smoke or like you gotta block all that out and just be in that zone. So when someone is on their phone or someone's talking and you can hear and you're just like, you know, you're trying to be nice, you don't want to be a jerk, but it's just like, can you please tell me to be quiet on the set, please? And then you know, AD be like, quiet on it, like, because you're in it, you're doing it. You got a camera that's like got your face here.
Have you ever done method acting at all or not with any of your roles? Or have you ever been on a set with someone where they're in a character the whole time like that?
I don't think I've been on with her the whole time, and I've done, I think, degrees of method acting, and there are, especially if I have to be crying and upset, I don't break out of that. Like, I had on Bloodline one time, I was doing this court scene, and I got so dark and so down that in between takes, I was bawling. And then I had to pull it back for the take. And then they'd say cut, and I would just lose it. I would just lose it. And as I've gotten older, I've been able to tap into that, unfortunately, with different things in life that have happened more quickly, but I can't get out of it. It takes me like a day. you know.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's like a skill in itself. Is like you think about the turning it on is the skill, but then also turning it off is a skill in itself as well. But that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And it hurts.
Yeah.
Like you're doing a scene where you're crying and, you know, you tap into, you know, I've got kids and I tap into things with them or things that have happened, and you know, you developed that part of you. It used to be my head injury, and then it was a friend that died, and, you know, different things that have happened along the way that I tap into. And, you know, things happen to your kids, and then that becomes more prominent than the person who died 27 years ago, whatever, you know?
Do you think being able to be vulnerable is directly tied to how good of an actor you can be? Like, do you think the more vulnerable you can be, the better? Because when I think about acting, I don't think I could ever act, because it's like to completely like lay yourself bare and like pretend to be someone else, and like what are people gonna think of me, or like I don't know. I just imagine like picturing myself like in the mirror pretending to be a character and be just like kind of, it's like cringy, right? To me, that's like vulnerability essentially, like being able to be vulnerable, not care what people think, like pretend to be someone else, like really go for it, right? Whether it's like, maybe it's an accent even, right? Like you have to really like commit to it. Like commitment and vulnerability seems to be a necessary recipe to be successful as an actor. Do you think that's accurate?
I think so. I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but I think the one thing about acting that you kind of get away with is you're playing a character. So
Okay.
you're not you.
Okay.
So you don't have the inhibitions of, well, I'm Jamie and I, you know, something's not right, or I'm embarrassed, or I'm whatever. No, you're the character. So I can be Eric O'Bannon on Bloodline, and I don't give a shit, like whatever, or whatever character you're at. So in a way, you don't have personal inhibitions. You know, yes, if you feel like you're not doing well, like when I screwed up on 24, things like that. But your character, it's not you.
So you think it's easier being someone else, but then don't you also? But on the flip side, couldn't it be easier being yourself because you know yourself essentially?
Yeah,
right? like on Mank, if you're
like
more
Mank,
yourself,
and,
right?
and I was more myself, certainly on Wednesday, Busman's Holiday. You know, I don't have to worry about how I speak, or, you know, I'm just, I do find things about the character, but it's more like me than the Irish guy in Sons of Anarchy, or even Eric O'Bannon in Bloodline, you know what I mean?
You said earlier it's more, you can take things personally sometimes, right? With not getting roles or whatever it may be. Do you take it more personally if it's a role where you're being more of yourself and kind of like internalize it as like, this person doesn't like me, versus like if you're completely you're auditioning for a character,
I don't think so.
matter?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because you're still the character, it's just some things are more spot on you, you know? Like even in Southland, I played that cop, but that was very close to me, you know? I've never been a cop in real life, but I've certainly played a lot, but just emotionally who that dude was, you know? Yeah.
And then what, do you plan on acting the rest of your, I mean, you love it, right? So like you're gonna do that probably as long as you can, right? Is the idea. That's gotta be nice too. That's something I've struggled with in my life, is like, and it sounds like you've found the love and the passion for what you do, right? It's like, I think for a lot of people it's not even necessarily trying to be successful at it, it's actually finding the thing you want to commit to, right?
Yeah.
Because imagine if you were kind of wishy-washy on acting, and then I don't think you ever could have committed to 25 years of it before you like get this big role in Bloodline, right? Like, it's almost like that love and passion, finding what you want to do and committing to it is what gets you there, and then it's just a matter of sticking in for the long haul, you know?
Yeah. There was a point where I rarely read for pilots, you know, before I got with Devin, my manager. Kim got me in a little bit, but, and I was working a lot. I did a lot of guest stars, some recurring and all that. And I read for a pilot, you know, you're down, I was me and one other dude, and you realize you're gonna make big money relatively at the time, and I didn't get it. I remember saying to my wife at the time, I'm like, you know, maybe this is what my career is gonna be. I'm just gonna be a guest actor, and that's it. And I remember saying, I said, I guess that's okay, as long as I can make a living, that's okay. So I kind of gave up on, not on acting at all, but on that being a series regular.
Mm.
And then I got one a little while later, you know, a couple years later or whatever.
Yeah, when I was researching you, it almost seemed like what you needed was the agent and the manager, and then once you got those things, it's like everything just started going well. And it seems like a lot do you think you was it that hard for that 8 years where you didn't have that or whatever it was, or 8 to 12 years, right? Was it just so hard to find that, and that's why you couldn't find it, or did you not even know to look for that?
No, I was looking. I mean,
you just couldn't find it.
I got thrown out of an agent's office, with my role.
So that was the thing, because it seemed like the acting part. It seems like you've been. I mean, you had it, right? So it's just a matter of back to the networking and connections things. You just needed the people in your life to
you need the chance. You need the opportunity, but when the opportunity comes, you got to be ready and you got to deliver. You get bumped up from the minors. You better hit the ball. You better catch it, right?
That's true. Yeah. So is there advice there then, as far as getting an agent, a manager? Is there anything when you look back on it that you could have done maybe to make it a quicker process, or I don't know?
I don't know. I mean, it's such a different world now with everything's online, and this was literally going door to door. You can't do that anymore.
You can't do that. Okay.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think you really. Everything's online.
Yeah.
Submit your picture, whatever.
But that might almost in a way set you apart, maybe, if you're doing that. I'm just thinking even just regular jobs in general, versus if you actually show up and you're really hungry, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah.
That could be.
Okay. Yeah, it definitely has changed, with the industry. I would imagine too, there's probably, like you said, the TV's almost flip-flopped, right? TV's now the thing, and movies seem to be on the back burner more, where bigger name actors and, like you said, the directors are in TV, and there's think of all the Netflix things they make with these big name actors. It's almost like a formula now, right? With the Netflix, it's very simple plot, a lot of action, kind of throw a budget behind that, throw a big name behind it, and then have a simple hour and a half, hour 45 movie. There's a lot of that now, which is interesting. What about with your kids? Was that difficult? With obviously with them growing up, were you able to be around a lot? Were you gone a lot? How did that work? And
well,
being a
it worked
father?
out well because until Bloodline, I was Mr. Mom. Because my Maura is a school teacher.
Okay.
So she'd be out by 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't get back till 5 at night or something, even though the hours are 8 to 3 or whatever. Mm-hmm. But she's a very dedicated teacher, so I was Mr. Mom. Maura was very involved. She's extremely involved now. But just, I was around. And I had to get, basically split a babysitter with another family that we each gave her enough hours to keep her. Because if I got a job or I got an audition, I had to go, Mm-hmm. So I was very fortunate. I was with my kids all the time because most of the jobs I got back then were in town, It's 2 days here, a day here, occasionally it was out of town for a week or two. So up until Bloodline, which was 2014, we started filming. So Luke was 10, Liam was 8. Then I started being away more, but I was there in the beginning years, for 8 and 10 years, I was there all the time. Mm-hmm. So that was good. And then, Maura and I separated and then different houses and all that. So that was tough.
Have the kids wanted any interest in acting? Either of your sons or not really?
My son Luke has always acted. He's done, musical theater. He's a very good singer and, performer. I don't know what he's still doing acting up at college now. I don't know if he wants to go into that as a career. I don't think he's totally sure yet. Uh-huh. Liam and my 2 stepsons, Heather's kids, mm-hmm. They all want to be in the industry, but no one wants to act.
Okay.
And they're all, great local kids and all that, but the oldest one, Jackson's a senior in college. He wants to basically run a studio.
Okay.
He's a business. He's got a full ride at Carnegie Mellon. He's a smart kid. My son, her son Charlie, is a freshman at the New School in New York, and he's really into scoring.
Okay.
He did internships, musical stuff for film and TV.
Mm-hmm.
Luke is majoring at University of San Francisco. He's in a combination of drama and social justice programs.
Okay.
And then Liam's a senior in high school, and he's hoping to go to film school.
Very nice. It's
Yeah.
funny how that works out. I want to be in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, so my dad worked at Disney when I was growing up. He was an animator. So I was kind of like in that realm thinking it too, right? And then like Colin, my youngest brother, wants to be in the entertainment industry too. And like that was kind of like after baseball, I always liked movies and TV shows. So I was like, oh, I could be in the entertainment industry. That'd be cool. And it's like funny how I'm in it on the business side, but like I'm in it. So that's interesting. Okay, I have 3 more questions and then we'll get you out of here. I always am interested about red carpets because I think it's different if you're the star and then you're in it, whether that's a smaller role or like kind of like you're the 4th lead or whatever, right? It seems like, I don't know, it just seems really uncomfortable, honestly. Like it almost seems like the way I would relate it is if, let's say you have a friend, you're good friends with someone, and then he takes you to someone else's house where he's friends with all those people, but you don't know them. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of just like with your friend, and if the friend goes off, you feel awkward, and it's kind of weird, right? So is that, and then I think too with being interviewed, they probably, like the questions they're asking you might not always be like why are they asking me this? Or like, it's almost like it's a part of the game, right? Like you have to, like these are things you have to do because you're like in the industry, but not necessarily something that's enjoyable. Is that like, what has the red carpet's been like for you? Because I think I was looking at it was something I was watching and I was just like thinking like, this just looks like so uncomfortable. Have you felt that way? Or, because you're also, you said more reserved, right? And you keep to yourself, not like a huge networker, so.
Yeah, not a huge, I mean, I
like
enjoy
that part of, okay, so you do.
Oh, I enjoy it. I've had some bad experiences. I went to maybe one Sons of Anarchy red carpet thing, and that was like a big deal for me. And all of a sudden you get your picture taken, and it was like crazy. But then like one of the stars will show up, and it's just like, Jamie, like they don't care.
Yeah.
Bloodline was great because it was such an ensemble, and like there's this funny photo. Kyle Chandler is a huge star, won an Emmy, and I'm up there getting my pictures taken, and he walks up and just grabs my face and kisses me on the cheek as a joke. And that wound up in every that was all over the place. You can still find it online. It was hysterical. And here's this big star, and he's joking around with me. Mm-hmm. The Wednesday red carpet, which was a black carpet, was actually rough for me because they kind of got me there early, and they put me through before anyone was, the other actors were really there, and it was just like, you could tell the paparazzi and all, they didn't really care. Like, it was their job. All right, who's this? Like some of them know me, and they're like, hey Jamie, saw you here, and they're wonderful. But then even with Wednesday, it was such a huge premiere, and they're taking, Jamie, look here, Jamie, and then someone goes, Jeremy, here, Jeremy, and I go, did you just call me Jeremy? And he goes, I'm so sorry. I goes, and I was nice about it, I was funny about it. Yeah. And then, they put you through, and then a couple people interview you, and there was one, kid in his 20s doing an interview with me, and you could tell he didn't care. And he just had a tape recorder. He's like, not even looking at me, just being like, so Jamie, what did you think about the show? And I'm like, you're answering and you're being nice. And then once the other actors came, it was so much about the stars, and rightfully so, because they've earned it. Louis Guzman, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Gwendolyn Christie, and then of course Jenna. And it was also all the young actors, young pretty people. And it was interesting being my age now, being a veteran actor, been around a long time, and knock on wood, working. But it was so glaring to me that I meant nothing. I meant nothing. And here you are, I'm the 4th name when the titles come up on the show. It winds up being one of the biggest hits ever.
Yeah.
And I was really depressed for a couple of days, because it was like, it really hit like, you're nothing. And it was very humbling in a very good way. And I don't think I've ever gotten, you know, I don't know, too big for my britches to put it that way. I hopefully never, but this certainly made me see it very clearly. It made me appreciate this is who I am, and you know, I don't want to be that, but I want to work like that, you know. And but it was difficult.
Mm-hmm. So it was like you're finally. It's like you're like you said, you're the fourth on the call sheet, and it's like you're not getting recognized, and you finally.
Well, it's like that didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because it was like Jeremy, you know, and then it's literally like Catherine Zeta's here, Louis here, and then you're just sort of like, you know, you're just sitting there with crickets chirping, you know, like, oh, I guess I better find my way over to, and it was literally like, okay. Get out, go over here now, and it was cold out, and then you know, Heather was there, and two of our kids, and they're like, I'm one of the actors on the show. Yeah, just go over there somewhere, just, you know, the handlers or whatever, and you're like, okay, could I, you know, I'm tell you what, I'm gonna move over here because there's a heater and Heather's really cold, so that's what I'm doing, you know, and I would have done that in anything, you know, but it was interesting.
Would you say you're naturally talented at acting, or is it something you've had to like really work on?
I hope so. I think it's like athletics. I think you're an athlete. We have a natural talent. We can play hoops, we can play baseball, we can do something, we can run decently, we can catch. It's a natural thing. I like to think I have a natural something with acting, and then I've learned to hone and find my way, the way I hit the ball, the way I skate it, you know.
Do you need some sort of natural talent, you think? Or can you just like hard work? Like I think The Rock's famously like an example of like, he just says like work, and I wouldn't say he's not like an award-winning actor or anything, right? But he's obviously had like an amazing career. But so like, can someone just work hard at it and you think like make it, or do you need some?
I think it's both. I think athletics is the same also. You get people, I mean, back in the day, I'm a huge John McEnroe fan, but there was this guy, you know, John McEnroe was just incredible talent. He was artistry on the court. It was just unbelievable what he could do with the ball, that no one could do what he did. And then you had Ivan Lendl, who was one in the world, who was this incredible player, but he was more like a machine. And I think, and not that Lendl didn't have natural talent, obviously he did, but I think as an athlete, there are players who just grind and work at it so hard, and then you have people that come along that are just so talented, and they work at it too. I mean, Michael Jordan apparently worked so hard at his game, but he was Jordan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Got in high school too, which is crazy. Random question: Are you a black belt in Taekwondo?
Yeah, but I'm not that. Yes, I have a black belt.
You have a black belt?
But it's like, I started it at 21, 22.
Okay, so you started it older.
Yeah, and I was going to backpack around the world, and I just wanted to learn to protect my head and blah, blah, blah. And one black belt said it best to me. He goes, a black belt is kind of like a varsity jacket.
Okay.
He goes, if you make the team, you get a jacket, but you may sit on the bench the whole time. I was a good athlete who did Taekwondo and got a black belt after however many years. But if I talk to a stunt guy, I'm not anywhere near them. I am not a martial artist by any means. No, not at all.
Did you learn anything from that experience though? Because that's still something pretty difficult to. What would
you
say?
A lot of discipline.
Discipline, okay.
I learned about.
Did you have that though from sports already? You think, or was there like another level you got from the black belt?
It's just different. I think a little more focused. I learned about stretching. I never stretched a lot, and I learned how to defend myself and to help others if needed to a degree, better than not knowing.
Do you ever keep up with any of that though, or just tennis? Or
I did once in a while. I'll
do it.
Yeah, keep my kicks going and stuff. I would have, in hindsight, I would have liked to have done something a little more flowing, because Taekwondo it's very hard. It's mostly kicks. It's like 80% kicks, 20% hands. I would have liked more of a kung fu or something that's, instead of boom, you're sort of
flowing more.
Flowing.
Thought of another question, sorry. I'm really curious about, do you think there's going to be more, so like with Busman's Holiday, right, that's a small crew, like kind of, it's more run and gun, right?
Yeah.
And obviously is run and gun becoming more of a thing? Because like, for example, I don't know if you know the show Frontier with Jason Momoa, but it was a Netflix show, like period piece during like the French Canada, like with the beaver trade and all that, right? Around that time period. And so Jason Momoa has a YouTube channel, and he would show the behind the scenes of them filming it. And it was similar to the Busman's Holiday thing, where it was more like maybe 4 or 5 guys filming, and then just all the actors, and then just running around with it, filming everything, like very small, like very run and gun, right? And then I don't know if the movie The Creator that just came out, they filmed that on a bunch of Sony FX 30s, I think they're called, which is like, it's literally this camera basically, this one right here, like that size, $4,000 camera, and they had like 20 of those, and that's like a blockbuster movie that just came out. They're just running around with it. So do you think there's going to be more of that in the future, or is that you have no idea?
I honestly have no idea. I hope not.
Okay.
In that, I do like filming. You know, that sort of style. I did a lot of that in New York because no one had budgets, and you're contributing as much as you can.
Uh-huh.
It's exciting. Like doing Busman's was great, but this industry creates so many jobs.
That's true too.
And when you're on a set, like that's what always amazes me. Like, you create a show. Al Go and Miles Millar created Wednesday, right? 2 guys thinking about, let's create the show. So the writer creates a show, and from that, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people are employed. Thousands of people are affected by that employment. My kids are affected. Heather, my ex, this industry creates jobs. That's what's scary about AI in a lot of industries. Is, are they going to replace, that's what's happened in the music industry, And it gets harder for musicians to make a living, and, they're gonna have drum machines instead of, Ringo hitting the stuff. So I hope not. Just for the sake of the people working.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that. Last question. And I ask this to everyone. What would your advice be to like your younger self? Maybe think of a time when you were really going through it, whether that maybe like 18 or like just during college where you like don't know what you want to do, and now like having lived your life. What would you give?
I would say, and I would say this definitively, and I still struggle with it and try to tell myself every time. Enjoy the ride more.
Okay.
There were times, I used to drive the truck for my dad all the time, and there were times I'd literally like just hit the steering wheel or bang my head in the steering wheel despite my head injury, and be crying and be like, am I ever gonna make it? Am I ever gonna make it? Am I gonna be delivering microscopes my whole life? Am I ever gonna? And then this mentor came into my life and said, you gotta move to LA, and that changed my life, and enjoy the journey more. I still struggle with that now. It's the frustrations of life and who you're financially helping and this and that, and am I gonna work? Do I have a job lined up? I did these auditions, I don't have anything, the stress of, okay, I'm okay for this long, or Liam wants to go to college, I don't want him to have college debt, all that. I would say enjoy the journey.
Would you change anything then, or are you glad it's kind of turned out? Like, are you happy you have found success later in life, like the success you're having now? Or
I love where I'm at now. I mean, I would like to get where I'm a little more assured that maybe I don't have to audition, or, just I would like more assurance that I'm going to work. It's worked out that way. It seems to work out each time, but each time it's like, okay, what's going to happen next? So I love where I'm at. I don't know. I would have liked success earlier, just to take the the financial burden off
Yeah.
a little younger,
Makes
you know?
sense. Yeah.
And, you know, to be able to order the steak instead of the just the noodles, you know what I mean? Yeah, but I so appreciate the career I have, and you know, with all the multiple faults I have, I like the human being I am despite myself, you know, like I'm trying at least, you know.
Do you have any, you don't have social media, you said, right?
No.
So nothing. What about, okay, what's something, if you were, like someone listening or watching, if you were to say like, what, something that you've been in that you would recommend for them to watch that you're like proud of, what would you say for them to like check out? You have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, Busman's Holiday,
Busman's Holiday.
Mank is a very specific type of film. It's hard
Yeah.
for some people.
Yeah.
Bloodline, the first 3 episodes really take their time, but when you get to episode 4,
That's what, yeah.
yeah.
That's good.
Wednesday,
Sure,
1923.
people have seen all that stuff, yeah.
I've been so fortunate to be on so many jobs that I've been on, and yeah, but those are my highlights.
Do you have anything coming out soon?
I have
anything?
things. I'm supposed to go back and film some 1923. I'm supposed to go back and film some of Wednesday, and I booked a job for HBO that I'm really psyched about.
Awesome.
It's
TV or
called
movie?
TV show
TV show.
with Mark Ruffalo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
That's
called
awesome.
Task. So, you know, everything's been on hold with the strike, and so hopefully come January, February, we get back to work, and hopefully, because I have these 3 things lined up, which is amazing, that's for me, I'm really grateful. But I hope they can work it all where I get to film all of them instead of being like, all right, you can't do this, but you're doing that, you know?
Yeah.
It's a high class problem, but.
Yeah. Good to be there now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we're good.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me. I
Of
really
course,
appreciate
this
it.
was great.
Bye.